And good evening. Today is May 20th. Right now it's 7:30, and I'm calling to order this evening's meeting of the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission. For the benefit of those who have not participated in Planning and Zoning Commission meeting, our procedures are as follows. The Secretary will read the legal notice of the meeting as published in the local newspapers. The applicant will be invited to come forward and present the case, explaining to the Commission and others present what is being requested for the property. Comments of town agencies will be read for each application if there are any. First, there will be clarifying questions from the Commissioners, then there will be an opportunity for clarifying questions from the audience. Next, we'll ask those who want to support the application to come forward. Second, we'll ask those opposing the application to come forward. As this is a public meeting and must be recorded, it will be necessary for speakers to identify themselves by stating their name and address before addressing the Commission. The applicant will then be free to leave or remain for the balance of the public hearing and the regular meeting, during which the Commission will try to reach a decision on each application. Each applicant will be notified in writing as to the decision of the Commission and has the right to appeal to Superior Court if desired. Decisions of this meeting are available the day after the meeting by calling the Planning and Zoning Office at 203-453-8039 after 9 a.m. Introducing the members of the Commission. Tonight we have Josh Hirschman, Ray Bauer, I'm Rich Meyer, we have Richard Wallace, Walter Corbier, Phil Johnson, Tom Cost, Richard Hudson, George Underhill. Staff tonight we have George Crowell, Reggie Reed, and recording for us is Lisa Brewer, and cameras is Shannon Gale. Mr. Secretary, you read the notice?
Sure. Legal notice, Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission. Notice is hereby given that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on May 20th, 2015 at 7:30 p.m. at the Nathaniel B. Green Community Center, 32 Church Street, Guilford, Connecticut. Monunketuck Room, second floor, for the following purposes. 1. Amend Zoning Code 273-2, Table 5, and add 273-96 to allow propane bulk facilities by special permit in I-1 and I-2 zones, and delete from 273-21C provisions allowing propane storage in the CD zone. 2. Lifelinks 2785 Boston Post Road, map 83, lot 14, zone R7. Special permit, construction of a residential facility and associated appurtenances to be maintained by a not-for-profit corporation, section 273-44. Copies of these applications are available for inspection in the office of the Planning and Zoning Commission, Town Hall South, 50 Boston Street, Guilford, Connecticut. At this hearing, persons may attend and be heard, and written communications will be received. Dated at Guilford, Connecticut, this 20th day of May, 2015. Richard Meyer, Chairman.
Thank you, Richard. We have 6 regular commissioners. I'm going to see 1 alternate. We have Richard Hudson will be participating as a voting member. The other alternates will participate in a conversation. All right, we have some changes. I know there's a lot of people here that want to discuss propane. We're going to get a little housekeeping done, move the regular applicants through first, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about propane. So I'm going to ask someone to make a motion to open the public hearing for Lifelinks.
So moved.
Any second? All those in favor? Aye. So Lifelinks.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Oh, yes. You are. Sorry. Hang on a second. We have some. I never get to do something really good, or I do once in a while. But we are going to receive a report on Route 1 West. This is a report that your neighbors have put together, and I've sat in on probably 25, 30 meetings. They've been working on it for a year. And this is available on the town website. There are copies of it here, and this is an outstanding document. These folks have invested countless hours, have come up with wonderful recommendations on what to have. One of the things I want to notice is that they have included a lot of commercial development in their area. A lot of times people say, oh, it's just going to be not in my backyard. That's not what happened here. These folks thoughtfully considered where these things would best fit in, recommended some areas for preserving the nature in the area, and it really is absolutely wonderful. So it was given to us tonight, it was voted on last night, and I just want to acknowledge the work of this team is I don't even know what to say. I'm humbled by it. So the committee chair was Chris Widmer. Chris, thank you. Brilliant work. I know all the work you put into it. We have Mark White, Matt Joseph, Walter Corbier, Elsa Green, Ann McIntyre, Frank Farrow, Gary Arbuckle, Ed Dinsey, and Victor Anatra, who graciously came last night to offer a lot of positive input, so I want to thank him for being there. Also, Sandra Diet worked tirelessly on this, and I'm hoping that she'll take on a bigger role as we move forward. There's a lot of people, I can't thank them enough. What we're going to do is we're going to read this for a couple of weeks to the commission. At the next meeting, we're going to vote on whether to receive it and make some other decisions too. But I want to recognize these folks, and I want to personally thank them and thank them on behalf of the town for their hard work, because it's unbelievable. So thank you so much. Great work. Okay. Now, lifelinks. Who's going to talk about lifelinks?
I'll start. My name is Peter Jelly Architects, 95 First Street, Connecticut. I'm here with my colleague Beth Kozarek. Beth Kozarek Architects, we're working in partnership on this project. Mike Harkin, Harkin Engineering, and John Cunningham is our landscape architect. We're here representing Lifelinks, which is a not-for-profit organization that provides transitional housing for alcoholics in recovery. They currently occupy a building site at 2785 Boston Post Road, known as Moose Manor. Also on the site is an existing garage. Which they occupy and use for storage and office space. They approached us and asked us to provide a design for 4 units of housing to serve the population that is in recovery and moving out of recovery towards more permanent housing. And they've identified this as a real need for this community that as they move through the recovery process, moving into permanent housing is a challenge. And so on their site, we've designed 4 units of housing, 1 3-bedroom unit. That's in this building, 2 2-bedroom units, 1-bedroom unit, and office space in the community room in the lower building. I prepared for myself and for the commission some kind of zoning path compliance that it's kind of my cheat sheets that tells you how we got to come before you. First, we had to fulfill the requirements of the R7 zone. You can see in that chart, we do fulfill all the requirements of the R7 zone. And then under table 4, number 10, we're applying by special permit to provide housing in this R7 zone. And the standards for which we have to comply are laid out there. So we began, I was talking with staff about what the regulatory requirements were for the R7 zone. We positioned our building such that it complied with all those regulations, and then started our site design around that. Beth, you want to talk about in terms of
our initial, I'm sorry, I'm Elizabeth Kozarek, 23 Highland Street in Guilford. Our initial intent was they currently have Moose Manor, which is men's recovery housing, and then on this separate property is the women's house. So our intention was to create sort of a campus feeling with a new building. There's actually presently a garage that does not conform to setback. So the garage is being removed and we're pulling the building forward to conform to this rear setback. And we've oriented the building to take advantage of solar opportunities for the PV cells on the roof, but also to create this sort of campus feeling and open space at the front. Right now you drive in, there's sort of a wide gravel sea of parking in front of that garage in the back. So our intention was to sort of green that up and create that campus feeling, and the parking would move back behind the new building. And then from the women's building, we would create a pedestrian connection across to the quad area. So we were trying in the signing also to go with that sort of agrarian feel that we were hearing was sort of coming out of some of the Route 1 West thinking and planning. And give a feeling of the open space. We maintain some of the sugar maple trees that are along the Route 1 area, and that's sort of the approach to the layout.
The other thing we'd look to do is to neck down the driveway entrance to the site and move it to the far west and bring our path of entry along the western border. Actually, one of the things that we're going to be asking the commission for is to waive the setback requirement for the driveway. And we can talk about that further, but as I understand it, that regulation is in place to protect the neighboring property from the imposition of any development. In this case, Lifelinks occupies the neighboring property, and we have a letter of support from that neighbor for this project. We also tried to bring the parking back behind, consistent with the Route 1 West planning design guidelines. And again, it's fortuitous that this report has come out today. We're, I think, in conformance with its guidelines. One of the things it suggests for this zone is that the structures look to Guilford's agrarian past. That's what we've done in the design of this.
So would you say that you adjusted the design of this to reflect the Route 1 West considerations?
Absolutely. We were aware of what people were thinking about and designed it accordingly.
So that's the hope, is that everyone does that, so great.
Yeah.
Terrific. What else you got?
Mike, you want to?
Yeah. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. For the record, my name is Michael Harkin. I'm a professional engineer and principal of Harkin Engineering, located at 78 Wolf Hollow Lane in the town of Killingworth, Connecticut. Again, here on behalf of Lifelinks for their property located at 2785 Boston Post Road. I'll keep my presentation very brief. To start off by saying that we've gone through this project numerous times with town staff, town engineer, zoning enforcement, wetlands enforcement. We've made the revisions, we've incorporated them into the plans. We do have health department approval. I believe you have a letter to read into the file. We do also have inland wetlands approval for this project. We meet all planning and zoning requirements for the R7 zone. And again, we're taking a existing non-conforming garage, we're tearing that down and making this lot conforming with our buildings and structures. So really quick, the project's located at 2785 Boston Post Road. To orient ourselves, it's towards the west side of Guilford, almost directly adjacent from Moose Hill Road. The subject site, you can see in orange, is comprised of 1.93 acres. Of that 1.93 acres, there are small sections of inland wetlands, mainly to the east of the property, and there's a small man-made pocket to the west. What you can see in green are are existing septic systems for that subject property. Again, as Peter and Beth had discussed, we'll be leaving the existing building that is up in front. I believe that house was built around 1778. So that house will be remaining. We'll be replacing that existing garage with the building that you see here towards the northerly portion of the property. Again, access will be off of Route 1. Instead of a 70-foot opening, we're necking that down to meet the DOT criteria. It's approximately 24 feet wide, double entry driveway, and then we have a couple parking spaces for building B, but the majority of the parking will go up this driveway, which is a two-way driveway, and come around towards the back section of the property. Again, that was designed in conformance with the study that you guys had just received tonight, as well as design reviews, comments of keeping the parkings towards the rear of the buildings. The utilities for the subject site will be underground. There is an existing water main and utilities right out in front of Route 1. We'll be connecting into them to get into the proposed building and back. The utilities for building B, which is the existing building, will remain the same. The septic system will go towards the easterly side of the site. The septic will handle just the flows from the new proposed building. The system that is installed currently for building B will not be touched, and that is located towards the east of the site. There will be some on-site detention. We do have a catch basin and a small detention basin located on the site to provide a zero net increase in post-developed runoff. We're actually decreasing the amount of flow. We size this accordingly because we know the adjacent neighbor has some downgraded drainage problems, so we tried to hold as much water back as we possibly could in order to relieve what was going on in his property. Again, on our project plans, we have all the erosion controls shown. We have the cutting and tree limits shown as far as clearing. Our subsequent project site plan basically has all the requirements for the septic system install. Our firm is required to be on site during that install. And then we just have the general notes for catch basin utilities and erosion controls. There are a bunch of invasive species on the site. We do have an exotic invasive plant removal plan that will be monitored for 3 years with the soil scientist of record. And the existing, our proposed detention basin that we'll be constructing will be planted with a wetlands type of species. So we're trying to create a little bit of cross-reference there because we are tucking that right in between adjacent wetlands. So with that being said, I hope that was quick and easy. We do have a landscape plan, which you see here, put together by John Cunningham of TEC Landscapes Design. You know, if we have any questions regarding this, Beth is here and she can answer them on John's behalf. But that, I believe, concludes our presentation, and I or anybody in the project team would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Michael, that's nice. Questions?
There are a couple letters. Would
you like to read them first?
Sure.
That'd be great.
Here's a letter to Planning and Zoning Commission from Dennis Johnson, Director of Health, dated today. The applicant's proposed residential housing expansion will require construction of a new on-site septic system. Soil tests conducted on December 30th, 2014 identified a suitable area for installing of a leaching system. An engineer-designed septic system plan prepared by Harking Engineering dated 2/10/15 has been submitted and approved for construction of the septic system. Based upon soil test results and site plan review, it is recommended that the applicant's proposed use be permitted.
Who wants to do the one from Kevin?
I could go again. Yep. This one is dated May 19th, 2015, to Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission from Kevin McGee, read lifelinks. The applicant has completed the checklist to guide low-impact development best management practices and is utilizing some of the recommended practices. The proposed plans show that the existing garage will be removed and a new residential building will be installed with a new sanitary system. Previous crushed stone driveway and that existing parking area will be converted to lawn. The proposed site plan indicates that 8% of the site will be covered by impervious surfaces. The stormwater system has been developed utilizing a low-impact design principle consisting of catch basins and roof leaders discharging into a two-chamber detention basin designed to treat the first inch of rainfall. The stormwater system is also designed to add an off-site discharge. The plans for the project have sedimentation and erosion control procedures that are in compliance with 273-97B, subsection 6 of the zoning regulations. The Guilford Inland Wetlands Commission, at its May 13, 2015 meeting, approved the conditions regulated activity with conditions for the construction of residential facility and associated apparatuses. Project will also require the filling of approximately 0.04 acres of man-made wetlands and the construction of a mitigation area within 100 feet upland jurisdictional review area. I recommend the following conditions of approval. 1, the Town of Guilford zoning enforcement officer should be notified to inspect the sedimentation and erosion control measures prior to any site construction. 2, process aggregate surfaces are considered impervious by the Town of Guilford zoning code. In order for the driveway to be considered permeable, the surface code legend should be changed to reflect a permeable design with non-compact material that maintains drainage. And that is the letters.
You guys okay with that?
Yes.
Those two.
Let me just take this. The Town of Guilford has an ordinance that takes the process aggregate, which is 3/4 inch crushed stone and stone dust, they classify that as an impervious material. They classify that the same way as you would blacktop, asphalt, or concrete. In the engineering world, we kind of don't look at it like that when we're doing our drainage calcs. But talking with Kevin today when he was putting that letter together, we have no problem classifying our driveway as impervious. We have enough area on our site to make up for that impervious coverage. We've sized the detention basin larger to handle that area if it's called impervious. So the project plans as they state, as Kevin had told me, A, we can either just call it impervious, which we're just going to leave it as process aggregate rather than putting crushed stone down. What happens with the crushed stone is you plow it, it goes everywhere and makes a mess. At least the process, 3/4 process will lock in there. So we're going to call the driveway, instead of pervious, impervious.
Yeah, it's the decision to provide crushed aggregate for drive was, one, aesthetic, and two, we were hoping to be pleasing the Inland Wetlands Commission in providing something that we thought was more pervious than asphalt. So if it's accepted, we will certainly accept it.
All right, questions?
This one I was thinking.
Go ahead. Point out that the design review committee reviewed these plans and recommended approval, recommend specifically approval of the driveway relocation as well.
Thank you.
Just a quick question, what is behind the parking lot? What is the space behind the parking lot?
This is an adjacent residential lot. There's a fence. The neighbor here, her one request to us in the design was that we provide a fence all the way to the corner lot line. A 6-foot-high wooden fence.
Yeah, her second request. She did have a second request in the letter that she provided, I believe to you, or her comments to you, was that we look at the drainage coming off the Lifelink site onto her property, which we did, and we added that those drainage revisions on our site.
I remember going there myself, and the water was sort of running into our yard and then back out of our yard. It's just a muddy mess. And the plans call for that to go away, so they are addressing the neighbors' concerns completely. Any other questions? That's it? Wow, okay. Any questions from the audience? Yes?
Chairman Meyer, I'd just like to say a few words.
Absolutely.
Sandy D. at 5 Jamestown Drive in Guilford. I am a neighbor of Lifelink Commissioners, Mr. Chairman. My husband and I live at 5 Jamestown Drive off of Jefferson, just 2/10 of a mile behind Lifelinks, and we found them to be fine, good neighbors. Prior to coming here, I had read a letter to the editor by Chairman Whitmer of the Route 1 West Committee, and I am very happy to hear the endorsement from Design Review as well as Route 1 West Study Committee, and in seeing the design tonight and the respect the professionals like Sari have shown for Route 1 West and their mission. I appreciate it very much, so I just wanted to state my support for the record.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I also want to add to that I appreciate your showing your respect to Route 1 West. Again, this document is from the neighbors and developers in the area, and the fact that you're acknowledging it and really making such a nice addition to this area. Thank you. Thank you very much. Any other questions or in the distance?
Ed Dinsey, 2751 Boston Post Road. Basically, I'm the downstream neighbor. I just want to say, we've been living there for 22 years. We haven't had a problem with Lifelinks. They were gracious enough to invite us to show us the design, I believe before it even came to the town at all. Being on the Route 1 West Committee, it looked like what we had been talking about. Basically, we have no problem. I just thought you should know.
Thank you. And just to acknowledge that, the collaborative approach by people developing in town, it makes it so much easier. It makes the decision very, very easy. More questions, comments? Last chance. Okay, can I get a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. How about,
Counselor's sake, we're switching 3 and 2.
yeah, we're going to actually switch to the end of the meeting. We were all discussing that because of the length of what it is. We're going to get our housekeeping done first. So can I get a motion to open the public hearing on the signage regulation for the rock pile?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Anybody here with these signs?
Together.
This is needed. We'll do this.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Amy Suchins with Sager and Salzburg and Knapp here representing DDR Guilford Commons. As I understand, John Nuff was here at the last meeting. At the start of the public hearing, we're here on the continuation requesting the replacement sign diagram that would allow the signage for the junior anchor tenant, the Michaels, that you see here on the first plan. If there are any questions, otherwise I think we're just here because the meeting will be continued.
That's right. So there's been no changes. They
No.
just want a little bit different shape
Correct.
to accommodate their logo kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Okay. Guys have any other questions? Folks, any questions, comments? Nothing?
Just refreshing my memory, it's on the 95 out.
All the way on the right
Correct.
side.
That's on the 95 side.
Perfect. Thank
This
you.
has the least visibility, correct? It has the shortest visibility as you're traveling.
Yes.
On 95,
On
yes.
95 in either
Correct.
direction.
Right, it is, as you're coming by, you're going to see, and you can see it in the construction, the tower's here, and then this is the furthest back into the site.
Yeah, we can already really see where it would be
Correct.
based on construction.
Do you, I have a question for you. Tonight when I was coming home, and I drive down 95, and I was looking, just say, where are they going to put that sign? The trees have really filled in, and I don't know that anyone's going to see it anyway. Are there any plans to cut the trees down at all?
Not that I'm aware of. I think everything, I haven't been involved in all the construction, but I think everything that would have been needed for cutting in order to do the construction that you actually see has been removed, especially HDD. We have, and then obviously the landscaping that would be posted on the plan.
Yeah, no, I don't know that anyone's going to see it, but perfect. Thank you. We'll see. All right, anything else from anybody on this? No? Can I?
I didn't catch your name.
Amy Suchins, S-M-U-C-H-U-N-S.
Perfect, Amy, thank you. Can I get a motion to close public hearing on this?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Okay, let's move into deliberations on lifelinks and DDR, and then we can move these other little guys out of the way, and then we can sink our teeth into why everyone is here. So, can I get an approval for the revised agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, all right. So, public hearing items, lifelinks, can we talk about this? What do we think?
We need a motion. I'll make a motion. Voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a special permit and site plan for Life Links 2785 Boston Post Road, map 83, lot 14, to develop a non-profit facility and affordable housing as shown on the following. Life Links dated February 10th, 2015, revised to 5/4/15 plans prepared by Harking Engineering, LLC, 6 sheets. Lifelinks landscape plan dated 2/14/2015, prepared by TEC Landscape Design, Inc. Lifelinks architectural plan is dated 2/11/15, prepared by Peter Jelly Architects, 4 sheets. This application is approved based on the following conditions. 1, that the town of Guilford zoning enforcement officer should be notified to inspect the sedimentation and erosion control measures prior to any site construction. And 2, process aggregate surfaces are considered impervious by the town of Guilford zoning code. In order for the driveway to be considered a a permeable, the surface code legend should be changed to reflect a permeable design with non-compact material that maintains drainage. I think, actually,
What else you got?
I'm going to, they represented that they're going to just change the amount of pervious surface rather than go forward with this condition, so.
Well, no, they're calling it impervious surface, and they increase the size of their
Okay,
retention.
then that's perfectly fine. And this application is approved with a waiver of the driveway location standards as recommended by the Design Review Committee. The approval is based upon a finding that it conforms with the zoning code. The special permit is effective on May 29th, 2015, and upon filing with the town clerk.
Second.
All right, so let's have some discussion. What do we think?
I think it's well thought out.
Yep.
I think it is great that they listen to the people over there, and the neighbor, and I'm going to vote for it.
Good. Richard?
I'm all for it.
Okay. Walter, anything?
I think that that they've laid all the concerns of the neighbors straight across.
Yep, which is how we like to see it done. Richard?
And taking care of all the necessary Ts and not dot, crossing the Ts, dotting the Is already.
And by the time it gets here, it's really just, it's too easy.
No, nothing to add.
Okay. All right, so with that in mind, all those in favor? Congratulations, wherever you are. Good. Perfect. One down. Okay, can I get a motion to, oh, no.
DDR signage.
Yeah. Who wants to read the motion?
Proposed motion, zoning code 273-206, voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve an amendment to 273-206 of the zoning code to replace the approved SCW signage regulation diagram with a new diagram labeled Guilford Commons SK-8 dated April 8, 2015. This amendment is approved based upon a finding that it conforms with the plan of conservation and development. The amendment is effective on May 29, 2015.
Second.
Okay, any discussion on this? I mean, we've also, we've talked this one to death. All right, so, anything else? No? All those in favor? Aye. Congratulations. Perfect. Build us that shopping center. We all want to shop. Okay, so that's it for the public hearing stuff. Site plans. Guilford Surgery Center. Are we going to receive and take action of this?
Yeah, we're ready.
Okay, so what do we have for the Guilford Surgery Center? Is anybody here to discuss this or tell us about the Guilford Surgery Center? This is a canopy. Yep. We snuck up on them.
The staff.
They're coming.
Good evening.
Hi.
We thought you'd be discussing the propane for a little while.
Surprise. We're saving that.
This should be relatively quickly. For the record, my name is Joe Wren, professional engineer representing the applicant, Guilford Surgery Center LLC. I'm sorry, you probably had this set up at a certain angle for the camera. And with me is Mr. Bill Mulhall. He's the applicant representing Guilford Surgery Center LLC, if you have any questions for them. We were here a couple of months back, if you recall, for a generator on the site, which you approved. That's now all said and done. This application just involves a canopy at the front of the building. You're all familiar with this building, the glass storefront building. The reason for the canopy is Department of Public Health has a requirement. The surgery center has a covered entryway, drop-off point and entryway on the building. So for them to occupy a part of this building, they need a covered entryway. So that's the reason for this application. We provided all the details in all your packets, provided several pictures as well of town staff. I'm not sure if all the photographs made it into each of your packets or not.
It's okay.
But the photographs just show the existing building as you know it, the flat glass storefront, and this is a a complementary glass-covered entryway that has been reviewed and approved by design review last week. So if there are any zoning-related questions, I certainly can entertain them, but as far as setbacks and coverage, we're well within those requirements. Yeah, for anything special, no need for zoning board of appeals or anything. So if there's any questions, we can entertain.
It's very simple stuff. Do we have any questions?
This was approved by design review.
I know. So it's not going to have like those stripes and all the lights and blinking. This is very subdued, I'm sure.
Yes. A couple bollard lightings for the walkway that were also reviewed.
You're also required to have those, right, to some extent?
Required by Department of Public Health, correct?
Yeah, it needs a covered discharge location, basically.
I mean, you're also required to have a certain degree of lighting underneath the covered area. Is that correct, or is that not? Per health?
I'm not sure if that requires a lighting.
address
I
that.
don't think they address that.
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
just, it does have a glass top, and it has kind of open sides, so the air and sunlight can penetrate it. So it's not a dark covered entryway. So in the daytime, obviously, it's as light as the normal outside would be. For lower light conditions or nighttime, we do have the bollard walkway light.
Is there anything else we should know?
So unless
Other
there's any
questions?
questions, pretty sure.
All right, so who wants to make this motion?
Voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a site plan revision for Guilford Surgery Center, 246 Goose Lane, map 75, lot 53, as shown on site plan modification prepared for Guilford Surgery Center dated December 18, 2014, revised 4/24/15 by Indigo Land Design and, quote, exterior canopy, end quote, dated 5/1/2015, prepared by Shepley Bullfinch. This application is approved with no additional conditions. This application is approved based upon a finding that it conforms with the zoning code.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Enjoy that canopy.
Thanks for moving us up.
All right, Village Green Gardens. Do we have anyone to talk to us from Village Green Gardens? We do. This is wonderful. So we want.
Do you have the plans?
You do?
Do you have the plans?
I don't. Ray, do you have
No, I don't have any of the plans back.
This is that we're skinny. This is right
We came to Guilford about 3.5 years ago.
Can you just say your name for the record?
Oh, Tim London, Village Green Garden.
Can you spell your last name?
B-L-U-N-D-O-N.
Just like it said.
So we came here about 3.5 years ago with a 60-day lease with the Fonticello's building. And we got a lot of support from the town on working with a facility that was pretty run down and in pretty bad shape. So
Now you got a new place.
So with the demolition coming soon, we looked for a new site, and we found the Cello site, which already had the zoning in place for what we were doing.
So it's only 200 and something steps away.
Yeah, right. So we made our decision at that time to close the Madison store, which had been about 20 or 30 years, and move all our operations to Guilford, minus the hardware. We used to do hardware in Madison. We decided not to do hardware in Guilford. So our goals and improvements were to answer the wants and needs, obviously, of the clientele that we've built over 3.5 years, and to build a clean, upscale garden center. Some of that being because we suffered some of the other building without bathrooms and
No bathrooms.
such the heat and things like that. So, and in designing this or coming up with this, we wanted to leave as much vegetation in place and as much of the trees. So I think you'll find that 95% of the trees have been left in place. And we tried to keep it as self-contained. I know we talked about that before, as self-contained as we could. Being next door to Big Y, there was always a problem because Big Y doesn't have enough space for unloading trucks. So they were always destroying the lawn on the Fonticello side. And so we tried to alleviate that by talking to the neighbors and trying to come up with a solution that worked for Joe Milano and for Angelo on the side. And so when we came up with this plan here that shows a seasonal truck entrance in the back. So that alleviates all the, like the big Y, whenever a truck comes, the road shuts down, they don't have to back off the road. So that's only for seasonal use. You know, obviously it's a tremendous amount of volume now. So for 3 months a year, you get a tremendous amount of volume. 3 months a year, you get little volume, and 6 months a year, there's no volume, nothing at all. That's the nature of it. So we've worked with the neighbors to come up with something we think that is, what's the word, pretty attractive. You know, obviously the more attractive it is, here are some of the pictures. Attractive it is, it's a garden center, and
Did you go through design review?
yes, last week.
They wanted to recommend street trees and sidewalk.
You're okay with that as a condition? Did they give you a right-of-way so that you could access it through the property with trucks, or?
Just one way.
Okay.
One way and only for that. The only thing Angelo wanted is we just have a chain across. He wants an actual gate.
Okay.
I mean, so we only open the gate to let somebody in, and then we shut the gate as soon as that guy's in. Nobody exits that property.
Is that just a gentleman's agreement, or?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And
they're gentlemen.
Right. And then on the other side, Joe Milano, I talked to him about fencing and stuff like that, and he said he just wants the property line cleaned up a little more and mulch put down. So he's happy with it the way it is. Yeah, he was happy with it the way it is.
If I remember right, there were a bunch of abandoned cars back there or something?
I think the last count I had was 9.
Yeah.
9 shells of cars.
Yeah, exactly.
What do you call it? I think they found 8 or 10 axles. They found snowplow frames, snowplows. There's a tractor trailer on the property, and 9 of those shells are still there, and 1 vehicle is still there. But apparently, there's an agreement to remove those in some days.
By September and the trailer by the first of January.
Right, so that's
And
an
you'll do
agreement
that?
with the landlord. And obviously, we wanted it to go on 3 months ago.
Good.
Just indicate where the chain is now, where the gate's gonna end up on the photo or on the diagram map.
Right here. You actually turn, you go into the neighboring property, you turn right before Napa.
So this is it also.
No, it's not visible. This is the exit. Yeah, it's not visible from there. It's so far back.
So it's
So it's
beyond.
back, it's like right here. Yeah.
So between Casey's and Zane's, or?
Between Zane's and Napa.
Okay.
Yeah.
I kind of think it's probably over here.
The other thing we tried to get rid of was at the Fonticello site, the bulk piles and bag material were all visible from the street.
Right.
Now I think you can see from the pictures that almost all that is not visible from the street now.
So, just as an overview, it's going to look better as you drive down US Route 1. It's going to be nicer for you because it's a real building. We're not going to see the big piles of mulch from the street. You're getting the area cleaned up and getting rid of the environmental issues. You've been through design review, so you're going to come up with the best possible design and make it look as good as you can. Tell me what the bad part is. Tell me.
I guess if there's a bad part about that piece of property, it's just long and thick. You'd like to have,
And so you've worked with that shape by putting traffic flow in that's going to minimize.
one way, and we took all the parking out from the front.
Which is a great idea.
So you see the plants now in the front, you don't see the parking. But the problem is that people like to park close to the building. So we came up with a plan that gives them the close to the building parking and the one-way traffic flow.
What do you think of how it's going to impact the traffic flow down US Route 1. And I'll tell you why I'm asking. I went by a couple weeks ago, and people were trying to navigate out of your lot onto US Route 1, and people were trying to get in from US Route 1. And I was on a motorcycle, and so, when you're driving a motorcycle, you sort of got to drive for everybody else to make sure they're not going to hit you. And I remember thinking, this isn't going to work. There's too many people not knowing what they're doing. So with this traffic flow design, you're not going to have a lot of bunching up of people. This is going to lend itself more to people coming in on one side and going out the other.
Right, any bunching up would be done on.
In your lot.
Right, in your lot. So this back lot, I mean, it's pretty long. Now, all these greenhouses are, what's the word for it, dead-ended, so a customer cannot walk into the exit area.
Do you have any concerns about pedestrian safety if they're going to be walking near where they're going to be driving, or you're okay?
Well, it's just that, I mean, to some degree, it's pretty wide, and because it's stone, you're not driving fast. There's no pavement other than what was there in pavement. So people go pretty slow, but generally speaking, especially this time of year, we generally have somebody here and a couple of people here. Because this is where your customer's looking for the help and service. So we try and put one person here and a couple here.
I see you have bag storage, so I'm guessing that you're going to be loading stuff into people's cars?
Right. This serves two purposes. This big area here serves is big enough for these trucks to make the outside loop from here out, because it's one-way loop for them too. And it serves as a unloading area from both sides for a flatbed truck. And obviously they're not there with customers, so the customer backs into here, pulls in here, backs in, gets loaded, and goes out.
Yeah. Well thought out. Very nice. What do you think? Anything else?
Looks good to me.
Staff, do we have any other input, or are we good to go?
We're good to go.
Wow. It's too easy
Done
tonight.
everything.
You don't need us tonight. You've got it all under control. All right, so someone want to make a motion, please?
Voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a site plan revision for Village Green Gardens at 715 Boston Post Road, map 47, lot B, as shown on an application dated 4/7/15, and on plans prepared by the applicant. This application is approved with the following conditions. One, that 3 street trees be planted as recommended by the Design Review Committee. And 2, that a sidewalk be constructed across the property frontage in accordance with town specifications. This application is approved based upon a finding that it conforms with the zoning code.
Second.
Okay, any other discussion?
Just one question, because there's some concern, and I can understand why, about exiting off on Route 1.
Yeah.
Now, I'm hearing that somebody wants trees put in front of the building.
Is that in the site area?
No, not, they'd be outside the site here. DOT would insist on
So they've got to be right up against the front of the building then.
that. You have that picture back. They would be.
You put a tree there, they
This is blocked off. I don't think it's a good idea.
They can't put the trees close enough to the road because DOT.
Trees grow.
No, I mean,
It's subject to DOT.
yes, they grow up, but they won't grow.
And there would have to be something small, like a cornice
Right.
instead of Korean dogwood, instead of something that's going to get very tall.
Did they specify the placement, George, or the type of tree in the design review?
It's Siobhan Towers.
Okay, and it's not a tall growth, I mean, it's not going to affect the sight lines.
She's going to stop. She said she'd stop and...
Siobhan Towers of the Towers Goldie Firm, landscape architects and designers, is on the design review committee, and she will go to the site and look and see where the trees, show us where the trees should go.
You okay with
Taking into account any impact on sight lines, right?
Oh, yeah.
Good, okay.
Yes, taking into account the impact.
Siobhan.
Do you want me to add that to the conditions?
I just want it done. I mean, this
DOT
could
owns
be...
too much of a road
Yeah,
for it to
yeah,
get there.
Yeah.
Siobhan.
I would think this is not.
So you can make it that problem.
All right, anything else? Last chance. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sell some plants. Okay. We are moving quickly, aren't we? So we're going to receive and take action.
Yes, you can, DDR Guilford comments,
So what do we know about this?
whatever you know about it.
Okay, we're back.
I'm back.
Yay.
Amy Sugins, Hurwitz, Agron, Salzburg, enough on behalf of DDR Commons. And with me on this application is Kurt Violet from DL Companies. I will give you a brief overview while Kurt is setting up, and I'll let him walk you through the details. We are here to amend the approved lighting plan for the property. It was reviewed and approved by DRC last week, and one of the goals is to create some more consistent color lighting across the property, and as Kurt will walk you through, distinguish between the pedestrian areas of the site as well as the parking field. So with that.
Hi, my name is Kurt Violet, for the record. I work for DL Companies. I'm a site civil engineer. I actually have some handouts. Maybe it'd be a little easier to see the board that we're presenting here.
Thank you.
So what you see here is the project site. Generally, we're talking about the exterior lighting for the site. What you're seeing here is a board with all the various light fixtures throughout the site. They're different colors to try to represent the different types of fixtures within the site. We received the planning and zoning approval, and in regards to the planning and zoning approval, it was approved with these two light fixtures. This light fixture over here on the left is an ornamental type of decorative lighting fixture. Those light fixtures are represented by these orange dots. So that was an approved fixture. And then the other one is this one in the middle, which is more of also a decorative fixture. And those fixtures are represented by the green circles here. What we're proposing is a new fixture. It's a Creed LED type fixture. This fixture is also shown in this sketch over here. It's a more modern type of fixture. And what we're proposing this for is in the area shown in blue. So all the dots that are actually shown in blue are in the parking areas and in the access driveways. We're proposing to replace this middle ornamental one with these Creed type of light fixtures. The more modern, has a better light distribution pattern. We were able to not only replace these, but actually remove some of the light fixtures. The original design had a certain number of quantity, and because of the light fixture distribution, we were able to actually reduce some of the light fixtures in the parking lots because it's a more consistent, better quality type of a light fixture for the parking areas. So once again, this is only in this area for the parking areas and around the drive aisles, and generally the same height. We have also considered the light block color temperature. All these light fixtures is a 4000 K, so they'll all appear, to be one consistent color. There won't be the blue type of lights or the yellow type of lights. They'll all be a consistent type of lighting for here. So.
Can I interrupt you with a question?
Sure.
I was in for the inland wetlands ordeal for this, and in it, lighting was a big issue. Specifically because of some sort of amphibians that live around there. I don't know what it is.
Sure.
But they were real particular about the frequency of the light, the color, and the amount of it. I remember them talking that the lights had to be shut off by 10 o'clock. And when Attorney Nuff was here presenting, he said he had absolutely no idea what I was talking about. So my question to you is, can you speak with authority that this lighting will match what the original inland wetlands people said they wanted for lighting? It's an important question because it has to match, or else we're going to go back to the inland wetland thing.
The photometrics for the design, we took that into account with the change of the fixtures. We didn't want to change or increase the light intensity, in the wetlands area or throughout the site. So the table here represents what the photometrics were, what they are proposed today, and what they were the approved design. And we are not exceeding the photometrics of the design that were approved. We're actually slightly making it better. We're slightly making it better. And these circles that represent the light fixture distribution, we kept that within the same footprint as the original approved design. So each circle represents a light distribution pattern, and specifically the wetlands. The wetlands, for your information, is in the northern part of the site. We've kept this distribution pattern the same as the approved plans, shifting them and altering and different types of light fixtures. So the three different types of light fixtures shown in blue have a housing type. There's ones with housing, ones one without housing, to kind of control the intensity going into the wetlands to match the approved plan.
One of the, I still get phone calls all the time about this, and one of the almost consistent complaints I hear is that gradually, little by little, we've chipped away from what looked like a New England village to not looking like anything that would fit in with Guilford. These original lights, these are the ones that are in the middle picture here, have kind of like a decorative appearance, and the ones you're proposing, I think they were called shoebox lights. They look like shoeboxes hanging up on top of a pole. Would you think, in your personal opinion, that these are of a similarly well thought out design? Will they look as good to you?
They actually will be, they will look according to the individual. So if you were to approach a shopping center and you were to park your vehicle, you would be, more drawn towards the shopping center. You as a person, you'd be drawn towards the shopping center and the sidewalks. That's why we've tried to maintain, the areas in front of the buildings to have that same sense of, decorative feel. And plus,
but in the parking lots, we're not going to do that anymore?
In the parking lot, they're more of a, the light distribution would be slightly better than these, the middle lights, the decorative lights.
So the trade-off is a less decorative light for better light distribution?
That's correct, yes. And we also kept them in mind as far as the layout of the system. We wanted to keep the decorative, as you're driving on Boston Post Road, to kind of keep the same decorative feel. So we kept the lights in the driveway in a few areas that, that could be possibly seen, while you're driving on Boston Post Road. Some of these other light fixtures, there's a retaining wall over here, so less visible. This is more of an aesthetic thing. That you will be able to see these more than the ones over here. So we wanted to kind of maintain as many as we could of the decorative type of fixture towards the center, and then these, be able to get with the new fixture. So,
can you speak to the benefit of a better light distribution?
It's just more consistent, more.
So it'll improve safety.
It'll with these LED fixtures, it's this type of light fixture is a well-known popular fixture. It's kind of very popular as far as the maintenance and then the upkeep and then the longevity of these light fixtures. The greater light distribution, these is great, but they're more for decorative. They're more for they have a smaller distribution, and it's more for the aesthetics. These have a better quality as far as safety.
So these would be less aesthetically pleasing, is what you're asking us to allow. And am I reading this chart correctly? Is this going to be in the high visibility area where you're putting the signs? The area, like we were earlier discussing in these signs, you're putting this lighting directly in front of that from this chart. Is that correct?
As far as the Michael signs, that was
the area that can be seen from Route 95.
They're along the back. The proposed signage is in the area where the decorative fixtures are actually.
So these ones that are in blue, I thought these are the new, less decorative ones.
Correct, along the property line.
Yes. Right, so the most visible site from Route 95 will have these not so decorative signs, less aesthetically pleasing. Is that true?
We also have a wall-mounted sign, these ones shown in red, which is right here, this W1 type of sign, and this W1 type of sign is in the rear of the
the building. This wall-mounted sign was also part of the approval, which is it's kind of like this type of fixture, similar to the Creed lighting system.
What did design review committee say to you about these lights?
The design review committee, we met last week, and they did approve. We did have a discussion as far as similar to tonight, as far as the location, as far as, having these located here versus, the ones that are located in the parking lot.
So how did you make them feel comfortable so you can make us feel just as comfortable as you made design review committee? Because I think that they're sort of the purpose of design
But as
review.
he said, each of us has their own opinion.
Oh, sure. I just want to know.
this at all.
How he made design review committee.
Well, we basically said that they're safer, they're more distribution in the parking lot, and have that separation between the parking lot, the vehicle movements versus the pedestrians.
So the original design as presented by DDR and whoever their lighting professional was less safe, is what you're saying, than this. They presented a less safe vision of what they wanted.
No, I think what is probably important to note is that I've worked on a number of applications where there have been revisions to lighting from plans that were initially proposed or approved in the last 7 to 10 years. And here, with the advances in LED lighting and the improvements that have been made, both with this type of lighting for a parking lot or structure, as well as I've been dealing with mostly in building signage, that the lighting has improved so tremendously over the last 5 or 6 years that you're really seeing a difference. So I think the important point to note here is that not only is it better focused lighting, it's also reduced the need for how many of the lights you need in the parking field. And I think the important
Do you have a difference in the amount of lights currently that you're proposing versus what there were? How many less?
There's roughly about 30 less. So let me ask you this question. We've had trouble in the past, particularly up here at CVS, where there was spillage into the residential areas, and it required some re-engineering after the fact. Particularly up here where you have a residential area, is this new plant actually going to be generating less looms or watts or whatever you call it, and less spillage than what was previously approved? Yes, put candles in this area, and then the area surrounding it. So to my way of thinking, there's going to be less light going off-site, less light that you're wasting, generating it on-site, you're focusing it better. So the trade-off may be something slightly less aesthetically pleasing, but in terms of the impact on the residential area and on the surrounding area, you're going to have less spillage of light off-prem. That's true.
Okay. And 30 less
lights. And then less lights, yes.
I think another factor that design review took into consideration was these lights seem to be, I don't know that anybody actually used this term, but state-of-the-art for parking lot design, and that the more decorative lights were still to be retained in the areas that are in the entrance to the shopping center and the places where you're most likely to first see the light fixtures as a visitor to the shopping center. So the design review committee felt comfortable about that. They felt that these lights were pretty typical for shopping center parking lots, and that this has come to be the standard for parking lot lighting. I think they were also impressed by the fact that there was testimony, which you didn't hear tonight, that these fixtures are considerably less expensive.
Oh, really?
Like a third less expensive than the decorative light fixtures. That I'm sure was a factor. I think that's
probably more energy efficient.
Perhaps. But they felt it was because they're in the parking lot alone, and the entire parking lot is treated in the same way. They felt the design review committee felt comfortable about that, given all those circumstances.
So back when you were applying for the more general approval of the whole site, you had pretty lights on the plan.
That's right.
And now that you have the approval of the rest of the site that includes the pretty lights, you would like to use the lights that are cheaper and look worse. And you'd like us to approve that individually on a site plan without going back to the Inland Wetlands Commission again to check for whether or not it has any impact on the wetland immediately behind the site. Is that accurate? Was there anything that I said that was inaccurate?
Yes.
Which thing?
I
was it?
don't agree with you, as Kurt stated. If you look at the photometric plans between the two, there's no greater impact or greater light spillage on this plan than there is on the one that was previously approved. So to the extent that there's a question about, if there was to be
Well, I didn't
lighting-
say there would be more light spillage or less light spillage. I said that you didn't have an interest in going back to inland wetlands to check.
It's actually, having looked at the approval, it's not a condition of their approval. There was a lot of discussion, as Attorney Duff and the Chairman noted, there's a lot of discussion at that point, but it's not incorporated into a condition of their approval. There is reference to it in your approval from 2008.
We agree that the lights that are currently approved are prettier, and those were the ones that we were approving back when we approved the entire plan. Now we have an incremental shift towards something significantly uglier by itself. Is that right? Or is that wrong? Because we have a lot of other approvals behind us.
I think
They're just as pretty as the other lights.
I think we're moving to something that's greener, more efficient, and with less light spillage into the residential areas.
Well, are you saying that?
So what's the problem?
If there are greener ones that are of a nicer design, why aren't they using them? If they want to be greener, that's great. I want them to be greener
Because
too.
they've already
But it
approved the
doesn't.
plan, they're actually improving upon it.
Right, no,
And
I don't know that they
that
are.
design-
I think that they could bring nice-looking lights that are greener and put them in. Why would they
These were
put these
so much
these
greener.
boxes?
Why didn't, this was not 5 years ago that you made this most recent application for instance, the drive-through. When that application for the drive-through was there, you could have also included these shoebox lights and said that they were greener, said that they distribute light better, said that they're safer for the parking lot. Instead, you've saved it to apply individually as a sort of amendment on the end.
Are you representing that there's no nicely designed lights that are as green? Is there only, the greener ones are only available in this horrible box-like design?
With all due respect, I don't think they're quite as horrible as you make them out to be, but that's certainly something we can look into. If there's a question about...
But why wouldn't you have looked into it before you came here? Like, you must know that we're not going to like these lights. No one in town is going to like it.
I like
We
them.
like the green.
I think there might be some of your commission members who disagree with you.
Could I say something?
Please.
Green, what's beautiful is in the eye of the beholder.
Absolutely.
I just finished an audit, an electrical audit for my store that was built in 2008. These lights weren't available in 2008.
Yep.
If these lights had been available, they would be on my building. If I do it now, I'm going to be saving 45,000 watts a year in electricity.
But when
And I
you
agree with
apply
that.
for an update to your site plan, it might behoove you to start off using the pretty lights, and then after you've gotten approval, upgrade to these other ones.
I don't think those are bad. What's pretty? Pretty is not, for you, is not what it is for me. What it is for me is trying to be as
So you're
efficient,
saying yes, it's
use our
pretty.
electricity, use our resources the best way we can.
All right, thank you.
Richard Wallace wants to
I'm going
jump
to jump in here. I've got a
Go ahead.
couple of questions. and
Go
a
with it.
couple. I was intimately around for, as the chairman said, hearings ad nauseum back at the turn, I was going to say almost the turn of the century. If I understand you folks correctly, this is also an issue of falls into public safety. Better illumination of the parking lot, regardless if it's on a shoebox hanging up or not. And I think public safety is something we also have to look at. I mean, and I understand that the walkways and things like that, we are still going to look colonial Guilford. I personally don't have a problem with the exterior of 95 not looking like
That's what people
Lights on the
see.
green.
When people drive by, they say, oh, there's Guilford, there's those lights.
That's where I'll...
So just they don't make energy efficient lighting that looks good, is basically what you're saying.
There's usually a light that works and the light that's...
So as a lighting professional, I'm asking you, as a lighting professional, they do not make an attractive light that is as efficient as these?
As these, no, it's basically the decorative. That's what you're getting. You're basically getting a decorative type of fixture. These are much more efficient than...
Right, I'm not questioning the efficiency. What I'm saying to you, and I'll ask the question again, as a lighting professional, and I'm going to rely on your testimony here, you're saying that the efficient lights, the ones that will require less fixtures and use less energy, are not made in an attractive unit like the middle one? Yes or no?
There's something we could, see if there's another manufacturer that could possibly, make it more efficient than this as a comparison. But as I stand here today, there is not a decorative light fixture that can to meet this requirements that we are presenting today as far as the pre.
So you said no.
So you agree with Commissioner Wallace that this is a safety improvement for the parking lot? It's a very significant safety improvement for the parking lot?
It's certainly better coverage, consistent light coverage, and with that, I think it adds to the, if you can think about some of the old parking lots where you had those areas where you get into a dark spot. You don't run into that anymore because of this type of lighting. You can get that better.
But with this decorative lighting, we could have possibly run into that?
The decorative lighting has a smaller distribution range than these the parking lot.
Which is why you needed more.
Which is why you needed more. So we wouldn't run into that safety issue that Commissioner Wallace is talking about with the current lighting plan, or these new LED lights do provide very significant safety improvement. I'm asking whether or not the current lighting plan is less safe than the lighting plan that you're proposing.
No, it's not less safe because there's more lights in the parking lot to account for the distribution. So the layout of the lights takes into account the distribution. So there's more lights to cut to make that coverage of the distribution.
So you would disagree with Commissioner Wallace that there is a safety improvement being done here. It's actually equally safe to the current plan.
Yes.
I had a question about the equally safe. So if you have 30 less poles, is that 30 less opportunities to have car accidents on a regular basis?
All the light fixtures are mounted on a concrete.
So that it wouldn't be any less car accidents.
I mean, yeah.
Okay.
So while we're here, maybe we should just ask, are there any really horrible lights that would be more safe and really just get it out now and spit it out now? Is there something like glaring big globes that maybe you can save even more money and be safer? Or is this it? This is as far as you want to go right now?
Well, we tried to keep the design intent, with keeping the poles visible and not changing, the decorative poles, trying to keep that.
On the ones that are seen by the road?
Yes. And then
but the ones in the parking area?
Well, and along the pedestrian too, trying to keep the pedestrian fixtures, trying to keep the wall-mounted decorative fixtures, the same as well.
So do your tenants care? I mean, you're renting to people that have concerns about their corporate image. Now that they're coming to Guilford, some people might say, this place is looking like not as nice as it could be. Maybe I won't go there as much. Are your tenants concerned about losing business?
The tenants actually have they have to meet their own photometric design for their lighting. So, for instance, the retail developments over here, they have to meet the design requirements for their per tenant.
Right, but that's inside. I'm saying, when people in Guilford or in surrounding communities look at this, they say, it looks like a New England village, it looks great, and they get there and like, oh God, look at this. So they might decide not to come. Your tenants are okay with that? It doesn't make sense, but...
I don't think we're not going to come because of the type of light you have at the top of the pole. The other thing is, if you want to pursue this, their rent could potentially be less because there's less power, less operating expenses. That's right.
I know, that's good.
It's in a competitive environment, they would. So I mean, you could argue it either way.
Right, all right, so we have reached the end of our,
Well, I do have one more question.
yep.
These lights, when you put them up, are they taller than the decorative ones? What's the height of them versus the decorative lights?
Basically, this is the decorative fixture. This is the new light fixture.
So it's shorter.
They're generally the same pole. The little bit of an arch to this decorative is a little bit higher, but the requirements as far as the height for the fixture, we kept that the same. So we're keeping the same height for the pole from the elevation from here to the ground. So.
Now, the picture you're showing here,
The picture is more of a maybe a generic type of fixture.
Concept.
These fixtures that are in the photo are taller than the ones that are presented. They're actually going to be installed, and they also have, these are only a single fixture head, whereas many of these in here will be a double fixture head, depending on the type of distribution required. So some of these are a single and some of these are a double fixture head.
could the lights that you put up actually, I see that the one that you're showing here is an ornamental and it's sort of a bronze or a dark color. The post going up to the light fixture itself.
Yes. Yes.
Could these have the same kind of post on them?
Yes. They will all be black. The pole here will be a round pole, same as over there. So they'll be black, and then they'll have the round poles. So.
All right, anything else?
I will propose the motion if there's nothing else. All right.
Go ahead.
Voted that the Guilford Planning and Zoning Commission approve a site plan revision for DDR Guilford Commons 1919 Boston Post Road, map 79, lot 34, 35, and 36A to amend the lighting plan as shown on Guilford Commons lighting plan dated 9/22/2014, revised to 11/21/2014, prepared by BL Companies. This application is approved based upon a finding that it conforms with the zoning code.
Second.
Any other discussion? All those.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
it looks as though this is going to pass, but I'd like to say I am still the Inland Wetlands Commission liaison to the Planning and Zoning Commission, even though it is true that First Selectman Mazza has declined to reappoint me to the Inland Wetlands Commission. I do continue to serve until replaced. And one of my responsibilities, I think, is to say to the Planning and Zoning Commission as a whole that it would be ideal for us to refer this to them because these lights are brighter and we have not fully assessed whether or not this will have an impact on the wetlands and the stream that is immediately behind this site.
Walter, I mean, it seems to me the professional here, I don't know,
We should
has told us
refer it
that
to inland
this
wetlands
is less,
people.
this is less than what was proposed.
Each individual light is brighter. They're right up against the edge of the property in a configuration that's different than what we currently have. And Inland Wetlands has not considered it.
I understand what you're saying. What further?
So my question is, let's pretend we go to inland wetlands, okay?
If we referred it to
If
them.
we refer it to inland wetlands, and they give a presentation and they say that, okay, this is the exact same, we're showing, there's less spillage than before. Inland wetlands is going to approve.
Then that would be great, and then we
can I
would know
jump in?
that.
Yeah.
But right now, we haven't actually heard from them at all on this revised lighting plan.
So,
I think it would be smart of us to.
So I am on the wetlands.
Sure.
And I know that this gentleman is a lighting professional and he knows his lighting. However, this original approval was based on people who were familiar with amphibians and reptiles. They had all kinds of people examining the lights and determining the impacts. And while he knows his stuff about lighting, I don't know that he knows about reptiles and amphibians. And so if this were to go to inland wetlands, and I'm not saying that it has to, although personally I feel like maybe it should, as an inland wetlands commissioner, I would want to have expert testimony from people who deal with amphibians and reptiles. And that might be very time-consuming.
Walter, if they had a map, the same exact that they have before us right now, with the one that they proposed, and they, it signifies where the spillage is along the side with this map, which I believe is.
But it's not
scientific. No, I just want to ask a question, Walter. And if they had the map and it was the same exact, and the spillage was actually less, and they presented that. And they presented that to us today. If they were to hold up what it was from their other proposal that was approved by.
Well, each individual, if it has the same coverage as the darker lights, then each individual light must be stronger. And since it is along the edging of the property in every direction,
But isn't
I
that
think
the
it would
point,
be
like the
blind.
shoebox component of it, that they can sort of direct more effectively where the
Possibly.
light is going to be? And that's why you see on this map that he gave us that all the spillage is over this side and not on the other side.
That's very possible.
Okay.
Well, that's
And that's-
not only is it possible, I mean, that's the representation you've made, is that there is less spillage off-site.
But we don't have the ability to review that here tonight. This is a site plan application that
Well, they're
requires no
representing
public
it.
hearing.
Are you saying?
Well, they're representing him as a lighting professional, but the truth is that none of us in this room are
Sure,
qualified.
you're
as
right, Richard,
these-
but what I'm saying is that if there's no way that this is going to be any worse off or better off than...
Do you know that?
Well, that's what they've said.
There's less.
Right, no, but they're saying it as a lighting professional. I'm saying that whoever these, and I remember there were all kinds of
I'm
people
sure that there were-
testifying, that we don't know that the frequency or the light characteristics affect amphibians and reptiles the same way. We don't know that.
Do you have the map from 2000 and your original one?
We have the photometrics from the approved plans and then the photometrics today.
Do you have-
Full-size sheets, yes.
Can we see those?
Sure.
And do you also have testimony that this light affects amphibians the same way as the lights that were approved? Do we have that? Because if we have that, I'll go with it.
So, I don't think it's necessary.
Can I ask a quick question?
Sure.
The one thing that was presented that I wasn't sure of was whether or not there are any other options that are more aesthetically pleasing that produce the same value. I heard,
Kurt's
I don't
testimony
know.
was no. There was nothing equally.
This is the photometrics.
Original.
This is the original.
Okay, so what's...
No problem. There's nothing equally.
So, and this is what you presented. This is exactly what you presented.
equivalent.
Can you show us? And this is what can you show
That's what he said, I don't know.
You presented the
But-
It would
along
potentially be a
the,
different
I guess this is where
manufacturer, as he stands
the,
here.
you can concern.
He's not aware of anything that would be more decorative
I really don't know the
in
answer.
that
And everybody
criteria.
wants to agree with some of them. But I don't know the answer whether LED lighting is as friendly to these amphibians as other lighting that was approved was.
So I guess it's
Do we?
Hold on. Oh, so the previous light was LED. Oh, so there's no different type of bulb.
Just a different district.
All right, so can you just show, Walter, maybe, can you go me on what it is?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's gonna help you or not. So this is where the inland wetland concern is? Okay, so they're saying, okay, this is great. They're saying that the bulbs themselves are not different. So the consistency of the height, yeah. No, the bulb, like the picture, right? You're saying that the bulb is not any different? Which was before. Wait, hold on. No. But is this bulb the same as though because we can't afford to have one of these? You can't control nothing. Hold on.
It's a different circle.
So these lights in my park, that's just larger. No. Wait, let me just ask this question because I think it will answer Richard's question. The bulb that were in these that are in these lights here is the same exact bulb that are in the new lights that you proposed. It's just
It's not the same bulb because it's a different light texture, but it's the same distribution.
Same color, the same
the same
But is it an LED? Yeah, were they both LEDs? Okay.
So what makes it possible for you to have fewer lights?
Because the distribution circle for the new lights is larger.
Okay, so Walter, look, here's, yeah, I did hear that, but no, wait, we just try to resolve it.
There is obviously spillage in the rear.
Wait, Walter, we just, where's the new, where's the one that you just gave us? Do you have, or the new one? I got it, yeah. So right, no, I got it also. So right here, would you say is the spill, Walter, look, so compare this.
That was the answer to my question, is it's got a larger.
But he has a box on it that prevents it to look, so if you look at what it was versus what it is versus what it was, it's actually, it appears as though there's less flowing over that. Possible. So you're saying it's possible for them not to fix the shoebox appropriately?
We often genuinely review this.
That's what I'm trying to do right there. I'm trying to generate, just totally trying to look at it. We have presented under these conditions. How would you, what would you present to inland wetlands?
We would present the original photometrics, and then I have the proposed photometrics, and then looking at all the various numbers or patterns, and we summarize it here, showing the spillage outside the property line, and then these numbers are the same. And then don't say
to them,
What I'm saying is,
on one side, or now. I mean, if they're more efficient.
All right, you want to call the question?
Call the question.
Yeah, call it. So we have a motion.
yeah, I made the motion, yeah.
We have a live motion here. Motion before us.
Okay, great. Is everyone ready? All those in favor of approving the new lights?
Aye.
All those opposed? And you have one. So congratulations.
Thank you.
Good work. Okay. We have a receive and send to design review. So what do we need to do with the staff?
George? I think on the Guilford Bistro, we just need to receive it and table it. Right.
Okay, so can I get a motion to receive it and table it?
So moved.
Second. All's in favor? All right, let's just clean up this last little bit, and then we're going to sink our teeth into some propane action. Airbnb, where are we at with this?
We scheduled a meeting for this past Tuesday, but we did not, I think that we didn't actually send out notice to the members.
Okay.
So we rescheduled our meeting to, at the moment, we have a tentative date for Wednesday, the 27th.
So we can table this to the next meeting?
But we still haven't gotten a confirmation from Mark White or Josh Hirschman on that.
Oh, yeah, you can get confirmation.
On the 27th.
I'm okay.
I'm okay.
Yeah. Okay.
So we have a quorum at least.
And just for everyone, these gentlemen also serve on the zoning committee, so they're going to be coming up with regulations.
Just an aside, 60 Minutes had a piece on Airbnb on this past Sunday about the problems they had out in California.
Well, for the record, frankly, I'm not sure that a separate hearing is necessary for Airbnb. I think that we already have, maybe we can tell the public this, as the commission knows, we already have bed and breakfast regulations in this town, and they seem equally applicable to a service that advertises online. And it would seem that they can be treated the same way as bed and breakfasts that have always advertised in the newspaper. And the fact that the means of getting customers has shifted slightly doesn't really change our overall system. And that's certainly what I'm going to say at the zoning committee meeting as well. And that'll be my recommendation. I think that there's pretty similar support for that on the...
Could you also just tie it into how that differs from someone who has a house and they rent out the house for a week? How that's different? How that's different? And I don't need to know that now, but
Yeah,
how, you rent it out for a month, you rent it out for a week, or you rent it out for a day, is that not a B&B? So maybe you can hash all that out too, and just come up with one overarching.
Yeah, I think that a lot of those sort of incremental adjustments have already been handled by our regs, by past illustrious members of this commission.
Dealt with it. Okay. Done? Good. So let's talk a minute, and I mean a brief minute, about sign violators.
I checked the town code, and it's true, the commission can give me permission ahead of time, tonight if you want. And actually, I will ask you for permission tonight to start fining violators of our temporary sign regulations and sign regulations who don't comply or who are repeated violators.
So is it okay with you if I discuss our little issue that we had together, our discovery?
Yes.
So, one of the things that we're dealing with is signs all over town, and one of the things about our town is it looks beautiful. And sometimes you get these waving flag signs saying, come on in, you have the blow-up thing with the guy waving. Those are overt, and those stick out. But there are some little things that the business owners nibble away at us at. One of them was over in Shoreline Plaza. I noticed that there were 9 signs where they shouldn't have been on the sidewalk. It was a safety hazard, and it looked terrible. And so I asked Ms. Reed to go and speak with them, give them a letter saying, look, come on, do the right thing. And at the time, on that evening, I asked if we could give permission for her to just fine people when they ignore her and make her go back time and time and time and time again, which this was because she only did this a year ago. And so a week later, I was on my way to a wetlands meeting, and I did not know that there was someone who already put a sign back out less than a week later. And Reggie happened to trip over it and see it and go in and talk to him, and he said, I'll take it in right away. 3 hours later, I went by, the sign's back out again, and I took some pictures and I gave them to Reggie. So clearly, there are folks who know that there are limits to the amount of time that the town can spend policing them, and they just wear you down. They just keep putting the sign out. There's no repercussion. They say, yeah, I'll take it, and they take it, and 20 minutes later, they put it back out. And so I asked last meeting if we could give Reggie permission to fine at will, not just someone who we would never give her permission to fine, but she now has to come to us and ask each and every time. And it prevents her from doing anything because her hands are basically tied. So I will ask the other commissioners once again to please consider, giving her permission to fine at will for people who just keep doing it over and over and over. What are your thoughts?
Richard, I thought that was a great idea, but I thought that beyond that, she should be given the authority to fine whomever she'd like within her complete authority. And that's actually, I've talked with a few other towns in Orange in particular. That's how a lot of the zoning enforcement officers conduct their business, and then what they'll do is they'll come and they'll give us a report on who they fined that month. And I would recommend that we do not parse out business owners of this town, and if there's a homeowner that is in constant violation, they should be fined as well. She shouldn't have to come to us. So I think we should just give her a plenary approach to fining individuals, and I was for that last time, and I'm for it again this time.
Okay, that's great, and that's really a good idea. Thank you. You're smart, and thank you for checking it out. What do you think, Ray?
I'm in full agreement with Josh that it should apply across the board. It should be applied consistently. She shouldn't have to come back here every time. There is due process. There's appeals that individuals get to take. As long as town council says this is something that we can do, I'm fine with it.
Richard?
Being a business operator in Shoreline Plaza, no, I don't have you trip over my signs.
Yeah, Richard never puts signs out. He behaves perfectly. I wish everybody did.
Josh and Ray just put it right in a nutshell. But expanded to homeowners also to have sandwich boards in front of their homes.
Well, actually, we laugh, but it was right up the road here. In a residential area, there was that sign touting the very cheap internet that our friends at, what are their names this week? Frontier. That's them.
Right.
But that's still a business, isn't it?
And like the nerds, they have 3 of these waiting signs, and I went to the store, and they said, okay, we'll tell our manager.
But they didn't. Didn't they say we can't take it down?
And they said, no, we can't take it down.
All right, so they didn't take it down.
We are told to take it down.
In direct, in front of an enforcement officer, they said no to you.
Are political signs going to be exempt?
Of course,
Yes,
they are exempt.
Pardon me?
Walter, any thoughts?
And what is the penalty?
Well, the reason
What is
is
it if it's not?
Subject to our regulations.
They're not subject to regulations. That figures.
All right, so it's not signs, it's everything.
Everything.
It's the guy that has 50 unregistered motor vehicles, or the man who's parking his tractor trailer truck in his yard as well.
So the problem that Reggie currently has is that it's easy to see a constant cycle where somebody complies for just long enough that she can no longer come to us for approval, and then goes back to violating for 2 weeks, a month, or longer, and then stops violating just in time to avoid being fined, and then goes back to it in a continuing circle. There are other towns that have had problems with their zoning enforcement officers where the place, it got frustrating for residents and for business owners, and I think that's probably how these regs developed. The thing is that now, under these circumstances, we can pull back this authority at any time from any future zoning enforcement officer if they start to get somehow trigger happy.
Who is going to do that? I cannot. I can't picture that actually happening. But I guess
in real life, the other thing is that people can still appeal enforcement actions to this commission under.
And we would get a report on every one.
And we would receive
one. I think to the ZBA.
No.
There's a
Hearing officer.
hearing officer is appointed.
An independent
hearing
officer.
So then if you're unhappy with that, you can go to Superior Court.
But they can come to us first, right?
Sure, they can say she's abusing her authority.
Well, that would really be to Joe Mazza, he's the supervisor, but
No,
I think you got to go to the regs and the statute say you got to go to the hearing officer first, right? It's not here.
Excuse me a minute. I just have to say, I know I'm out of line, but there are many people here for something that was supposed to be second on the agenda. And this happens over and over again when public are at these meetings. Why do we have agendas? I have so much to do tonight, and I'm sure everyone else's time here is important. And this is an issue that could have come up on any meeting. It's not critical to tonight. I understand the other people had to make decisions about parking lots that are being built right now and buildings that are being built, but this is not one of those things. And it is 9:00 whatever.
These do go until 11 a lot.
Well, we do, but we have agendas. I would have done a lot more work in my office if I knew this was going to start at 9:30.
All right, so let's wrap this up real quick. Do we have anything else?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so can we vote to give her this permission right now? Are we allowed to do that right this minute? Let's do that. Okay, so can I get a motion to do this?
Yes. So, what's the, Reggie?
You're making a motion to give Reggie Reed, the enforcement officer, the right to fine at her discretion and then write a report to us in the next meeting. Is that correct? Yes. Is there someone seconding that?
I'll second it, but I still have a question.
Real quick.
Is there a schedule of what the fines are going to be? Can she just arbitrarily say, you're 1,000 and you're 100?
No, there's a limit of $150, yes?
Per violation.
Per violation.
Okay.
Done? Done? All those in favor? Aye. It's unanimous. You got it, Reggie. Use it well. Okay. We don't have any bills. We'll wait on the minutes. Let's go.
We got the mandatory referrals.
You can do that later.
Yeah, we can do that.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to move to open the public hearing for item 2 on the agenda.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to recuse myself.
Please do.
Thank you.
In Josh Hirschman's absence, we're going to appoint Bill. You're the lucky winner. You're now in.
You got about 20 minutes left on the disc. Change that before we get.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt in the middle of it. Let's change the disc. It'll just take 2 minutes. I promise to be really quick, and then we'll get into it, and you can all have what you want to say as much time as you need. And we are back. We have not transacted any business. We have not discussed this case. We're going to move right up to where we were. We had a motion by Commissioner Corbière to open the public hearing on the propane issue. We did not have a second. Is anyone seconding?
Seconded.
All those in favor? Aye. All right, so we're going to open this. I'm going to let everyone decide how long we should talk. Sometimes when we have a hearing like this, there's a limit. I don't like to do that. I think that it's important that the democratic process takes place. You are all participating in a democracy. Your voice gets heard and your opinion gets counted. So to put a time limit on that doesn't go with me. I personally have no problem staying here till 3 in the morning if you need me to do that. I don't know that you're going to want to do that, but that's what I'm willing to do because I facilitate this. So why don't we let Mr. Crowell, who's standing, obviously wants to say something. Why don't we give him a minute to just start it, and then we will go with it.
Yes, thank you. As you know, you asked your planning committee to develop a series of proposals or a regulation dealing with propane storage facilities. Our planning committee has developed a proposed text. Amendment to the zoning code. This is the first public hearing pursuant to their vote to transmit this to you. There will be a second public hearing required, as you know. Yep. I'll summarize briefly the content of their proposal. You're familiar with this because it has been discussed before by this commission. The proposal does 3 things. It creates a new land use known as a propane bulk facility, which is any facility where the primary function is to store LP gas prior to further distribution, where LP gas is received by cargo tank, motor vehicle, railroad tank car, or pipeline and distributed by portable container, parentheses, package delivery by cargo tank, motor vehicle, or through gas pipe. So there's a new land use created which doesn't exist now, called a propane bulk facility. This is meant to describe the type of facility that we typically, or in the recent past, have been called propane storage. This is distinguished from propane storage that might be accessory to some other use, like propane storage that might be in your yard, or propane storage that might be associated with business, where they use the propane for their own purposes. This is a facility where the propane is stored and then distributed or redistributed to other users.
George, can I just jump in a second? So what we're doing is we're differentiating someone who would have a 30,000-gallon tank for like a school and going to heat their place with it, and they're going to draw off of that to heat the building, versus a distribution facility, which we're now going to refer to as a propane bulk facility.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
This proposal allows propane bulk facilities, as I just defined it, by special permit in the I-1 and I-2 zones. Those are the 2 industrial zones that you're familiar with. Also subject to a set of criteria which are described in a section of the zoning code pursuant thereto, referred to in this text as 273-96, propane bulk facility. No bulk facility shall be created except in conformance with this section, which I'll review in a moment, and also Article 10, which is the article of the zoning code that creates the process for special permits. So again, no propane bulk facility is allowed except by special permit in I-1 or I-2 zones, subject to the following standards. The purpose of that regulation, I'll read to you. The purpose of the 273-96, the storage and distribution of propane has the potential to be hazardous and to have an adverse impact on residential areas. For this reason, the establishment of such uses are allowed only by special permit. Such facilities shall meet the following standards. 1, tanks over 1,000 gallons must be buried or mounted in accordance with best engineering practices. No such facility shall be established on a lot less than 4 acres in size. All tanks must be set back a minimum of 100 feet from any property line, and any point of transfer of propane from a tank to a vehicle must be at least 150 feet from the property line. No such facility shall be established except where a traffic study has been performed demonstrating that the transport of the product will be safe. No such facility shall contain more than 30,000 gallons of total bulk storage. No such facility shall be located within any A, E, or VE zone, these are flood zones, or equivalent zone as defined by FEMA, FIRM maps. All tanks and vehicle parking areas shall be screened from adjacent properties, and all activities associated with such facilities shall conform with 273-43B of this code, which is a performance standard relating to odors and gases that might be emitted by any facility. The third part of this proposal, first part is to create the definition, the second part is to modify Table 5 and create the special permit criteria. The third part of this proposal amends the zoning code section 273-21C by deleting the language which was added a number of years ago that allows propane storage, now defined as for propane bulk facilities, in CD zone. The language reads, in addition, the bulk storage and retail sale of propane on parcels of land containing less than 4 acres in area and located west of Westlake Avenue and south of US Route 1 in the CD zone is permitted by special permit. This is language that is proposed in this proposal of the planning committee to be eliminated, and therefore propane bulk storage, as used in that phrase, would not be permitted in that zone or in that location. So those are the three parts of this proposal.
Thank you. So I am sure that you all want to tell me about your feelings about this. How do we want to do that? Do we just want to, do we have a list that we can go down that you have already made out, or do we don't want to? So is it okay with everyone if we start at the top of the attendance list and work our way down? Does that work for everybody?
I think everyone is on it, but I think some of us just signed to be here and not intended to speak.
Okay.
Unless you want everyone to speak.
No, I only want you to speak if you want to speak. This is really for you. We exist at your service, so we're here to do what you want.
People can just volunteer when they're ready to speak.
Okay, so why don't we do that? We have someone already raising their hand. Just need to tell us your name.
Janice Blasiak, I live at 41 Crabapple Lane. I'm a professional engineer. Actually, I'm a town engineer of the community. What I did was I approached this rather quickly, so excuse some of the scribble and such because I didn't have access to the documents other than through the town GIS. So I presented some documents for you to review because you have to make the decision. And I think it should be an informed decision. I took the town's GIS maps and pointed out to you based on the language that's proposed. First of all, I'm against bulk propane facilities in our town. And I do support the deletion proposal of the CD zone. So what I did is I took a look at what areas of town we're really talking about that will be allowed to have it under this current regulation. And there's 2 areas of town as shown on map 1, and they're basically adjacent to our residential zones. We have our fire headquarters, we have our police department, we have Adams Middle School, we have our Route 1 corridor, we have our business park development on Gould Lane, and we also have the Yale New Haven Surgical Center and Emergency Center on Goose Lane. And quite frankly, if you look at some of the further documentation I'll get into, you also have the town center, which really isn't what would be considered an evacuation zone should some leak happen at one of these facilities. So what I did from there, because what you have to realize is this is eliminating your velocity zones and your AE zones, which I support to a point because I'm a floodplain manager, and I get the fact that it's a high-risk zone to have such a facility, although you can probably design at least to an AE zone to have your tanks be there and be safe, as they hopefully are currently anchored down on the Soundview Road area to the standards of flood zone.
Are they anchored down?
I don't know. I've never been to that facility.
That's a great question to answer.
They should be anchored down. So getting to what I hope to be just a brief presentation, I have not been involved in the discussion at prior meetings or anything like that. But I do live nearby. I will disclose that. And I do travel Hubbard Road regularly to get to my house, and Long Hill Road and Route 77. So when you get to your next page, map number 2, it kind of zooms into the areas of town that I highlighted on map 1 and gets into what properties this includes. So it's a very limited number of properties that meet the criteria of 4 acres and also outside the flood zone. Now, as you can see, there is some flood zone on some of these parcels, so whether they could work or not, I didn't get into design detail here. So the first area is, as I said before, centered around our fire headquarters, the police department, and also Adams Middle School is just to the south. 95 runs adjacent to it, and then obviously your yellow area is all your residential areas that are pretty well developed in this part of town, because it is a more densely populated area of town. Map number 3 is area 2, which is also areas, parcels, which I've highlighted, based on the size requirement of 4 acres. Again, you see there is some flood zone overlay here, so some of these may or may not work. So it's a very limited number of parcels. But those limited number of parcels are adjacent to some of your most valuable assets, which are your people, your businesses, your infrastructure, your schools, your hospital, your fire department, your police department. So, Guilford is a residential community. We all recognize that. Your POCD recognizes that. We want economic development in our town. I support that. I just don't know that this type of development for propane bulk storage really is economic development. That is a big tax revenue generator for the town. And I don't believe that it's really something that we need to have in our town because, number one, we already have it. So let's just leave it alone at that. And number 2, New Haven is close enough. I'm assuming you can probably get a lot of propane in New Haven once Q Bridge is completed. I think traveling to New Haven will be even easier. And to serve the community's needs, I think that access is more than adequate to get the propane that is needed to serve our community. I went a little further. I included map number 4, which is the entire area of town that includes industrial. Forgive me, I didn't put the overlay here, but all those areas to the south that are pink and blue, that are I-1 and I-2, could not be developed because they all lay in the floodplain. So with 2 exceptions, the post office site, I think, is large enough and high enough out of the floodplain, but it's the post office, not likely to get turned into a facility, at least not in the near future, but always possible. And then you have that one piece of land that's south of Soundview that has really no access, I believe. So that one area, because there's really no access to it, is unlikely to be developed. But it would be allowed under your zoning regulation. I gave you a legend, so you can read the map clearly. So the next thing I did is I talked to a fire marshal, not Guilford's fire marshal. He has something to say about it, but and I do tier 2 reporting for the town of Brantford, which you have to report hazardous materials that are present in your town. Anyone who has hazardous materials in certain bulk standards has to report, so your firefighters know.
Can I ask you, and I don't mean to interrupt you, but can I ask you, does Brantford have substantial propane storage?
No, it's not allowed in Brantford. We have a maximum of a 10,000 gallon
Right, so the shocking thing, and this is great, and you can continue in a second, but we went through this when it was proposed in another part of town, and it's shocking to see how much propane storage is actually in Guilford already. And most other towns have significant limitations. So it's great that you're bringing this up. Please continue.
So what I did was I went to my fire marshal friends, and they provided me with this archive document. I mean, it's archived, it's been subsequently updated. It's a very complicated document, and I will submit it for the record, both the archived and then the...
It's very good.
So we have it's called the Risk Management Program Guidance for Propane Storage Facilities. It's EPA 40 CFR Part 68. I found this to be a much more readable document than their new document, which is Part 68. It covers, like, more generally chemical accident prevention provisions. So I'll submit those both for the record, but for your little packet, what I kind of garnered is informative information is this one sheet I included, which it puts propane storage into 3 categories: Program 1, Program 2, Program 3, and I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to pretend that I know a lot about the different programs. But, you know, they get into descriptions of things, and actually the facility that's being, not the facility, but the proposed regulation would allow a facility that would probably end up in the most stringent program, which is Program 3. But here on Program 1, what they talk about, which I've highlighted on your sheet, is a worst-case release is defined by the rule as the loss of the contents of the single largest vessel or piping containing the regulated substance. For propane and other flammable substances, the released substance is assumed to explode and generate a pressure wave that can damage people or structures. The rule requires you determine the distance to a 1 psi overpressure. This scenario is required by the regulation, and you must adopt the scenario. So you have to plan for an accident. And Table 2 provides the worst-case distance to a 1 psi overpressure for propane tanks. And so you have your different capacities, and you start with 500 to 1750. You have an endpoint distance of 0.1 miles. The next category is up to 7,000 gallons, and you're at 0.2 miles. And that, when you look at your areas, puts all our critical infrastructure, police department, fire department, Adams Middle School, the hospital, into that range.
Can I ask you a quick question? Do you know if these figures contemplate buried or bermed tanks, or are these for raised tanks? Because I know there's significant difference in terms of the reactive forces.
Yeah, so what I asked the fire marshal that, the fact that they're being proposed to be buried, and I don't know, there may be some benefit to that, but his response to me is, you're just going to have a big hole, So if the thing blows up, it blows up, and a earthen berm isn't going to prevent it from spreading. It kind of stops shrapnel, it kind of contains a little bit, and the other concern that you have to consider, which I'll get into next, is just leaks. You could have leaks that you may not have the explosion, you don't, but you still have to treat it as now a response, evacuations, and all the rest, and berming it doesn't solve those problems either. So I don't pretend to be an expert on the berming situation, but I think the point really is this a facility that the town of Guilford really needs to have within its borders for a bedroom community? I just think if you look at I read through some of your economic development plans. I'm familiar with your old POCD. I'm not familiar with the new upcoming POCD. But I don't think this meets the criteria of either of those documents. I think you're going to find your tax revenue for such a facility is going to be small. I didn't have the time to see, how much taxes we're getting on a larger facility that we currently have in town. But I don't think it's the tax revenue generator we want in town anyhow, even if it did bring in a lot of tax revenue. So the next couple pages is more from the firefighting aspect. I gave you the cover page so you know the reference. It's 2012 Emergency Response Guidebook that firefighters use when they're dealing with an incident. And I highlighted the bottom, but feel free to read everything on your own. But, evacuation. So when you have a spill, and a spill is a hose breaks, an accident occurs, and so there's a rupture of either the tank or a hose. There's a mechanical failure of one of your valves or something like that. That's considered a spill, so you have a release happening. So you have to consider, according to this guidebook, the initial downwind evacuation for at least 80 meters, which is half a mile. Okay, that's half a mile. Okay, so now our firefighters, our emergency response and TAP has to figure out how they're going to evacuate people in a half a mile, including a school, elderly housing we have in this area within a half mile. We have a hospital. What if people are in surgery? What are they supposed to do? How are they supposed to evacuate a medical center?
Right.
Okay? And then fire, if a tank, rail car, tank truck is involved. You have a mile in all directions you have to be worried about. You know, talking to the fire marshal, he's like, you know, we're going to evacuate to a mile because we have to be concerned.
You are aware that currently we have a propane storage facility in this town that can hold up to 2 rail cars.
Yes, I'm aware of that.
So a mile out from that would take you out to sea in one direction,
Yeah,
into Madison in the other direction.
right.
All the way back into the center of town, probably past the center of town.
Right.
So you make a valid point. Go ahead. I'm
So,
sorry.
I mean, we do have, and that's another point, we do already have a facility here. Why, you know, how it got there, why, I don't know, but, you know, why do we need to allow others to happen, and then you're just going to have overlap of areas of evacuation zones and incident responses that is more than I'm sure our fire department, police department, volunteers, and everyone really wants to or can handle. So, you know, I think that we have to, there's no reason why a community like ours has to provide for this type of facility. It's certainly in your hands to make that decision. I think you probably heard a lot of discussion from the public. Up till now, I haven't honestly followed it. I'm usually at my own night meetings to really get involved. I didn't want to get involved with individual properties or individual business owners. A lot of those people are my friends, my neighbors. I get that. In my position, I don't want to get into that. But you can now have before you a regulation that you could just say no to. We don't need it, and you could just put a limitation on what you're going to allow. And I don't think it should be 30,000 gallons, or certainly not more. And you have a facility where you have trucks, you know, tanker trucks coming in and out to either, you know, load the tanks that are there for distribution, or the smaller trucks to come in for pickup and distribute. Every one of those actions is an opportunity for an accident to happen. An accident meaning something breaks, you know, a valve fails, a leak occurs, what have you. You have mechanical failures, human failures, and accidents that play a role here. And we have a place like the port in New Haven, which is a place that, you know, is planned for, it's well established, and it's close enough that we can benefit from its location. Its commodity can be shipped to us really quickly down 95 to whatever needs for the businesses and homes that use propane to heat or do their business. You know, that's everyone's right to have that access, and it's not like it's 2 hours away or even an hour away. It's 20, 30 minutes, depending on traffic, and it's only going to get better once the Pew Bridge is done. So, you know, I really encourage you to not keep spending your time on something that just doesn't fit our community. I live in, I mean, and I can't speak for Branford, you know, I'm a staff person there. They have a very large industrial area that's contiguous at the east end of town. They have some other small interspersed areas, but Guilford's industrial zones are interspersed kind of haphazardly, and I'm sure developed out of what was already there when zoning first got created. I don't know the whole history, I'm sure George could tell you, but, you know, so we're very interspersed into our neighborhoods, into other types of zoned areas, and I don't think if you have a large, even Branford has a large industrial area, and they're right now choosing not to allow such a facility by the way the regulations are written. I think the regulations are written, we've talked about already as staff, it might need to be given further defined to make it a little more clear, but in my reading of it, it caps you at 10,000 gallons. petroleum products, of which propane is a petroleum product. So the other question I had too is, what would such a facility in town do to the town's ISO rating and homeowners insurance costs? And that's something that should be asked of our fire chief and fire marshal. I'm sure maybe the one that's here already is affecting us. We have a limited water supply in town to fight fires, not necessarily that, I'm not sure you use water on propane. So, you know, but we have to take a look at what we want as a community and keep revisiting and trying to fit a, you know, round peg in a square hole just doesn't make sense for, I think, Guilford. You know, you could just say, no, we're done. You know, everyone could have their tanks that they need to run their houses and businesses, but we don't need to have a facility to distribute and store.
Right, so your points are that there's really no safe place if there's a problem, that it will increase the cost to homeowners, probably because it's in town, or their homeowners insurance. Probably would require extra training for the fire department and police department, so there would be added expenses there. We currently have 165,000 gallons of storage, which one of my quotes that we were doing this last time is that that's more fuel than was aboard the Apollo rocket that went to the moon, and I don't necessarily want to blast Guilford off to the moon. So, powerful presentation. You know, do any of the other commissioners have anything they want to ask of her or gather any other information from her research?
I'll submit these two documents for the record in case anyone is interested in.
Brilliant. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Who else? Victor.
Yes.
My bud.
Victor Anatra. First of all, I'd like to commend the planning committee for actually coming up with this proposal. George Crowell read for the first time, and it's not here on the agenda, but he very eloquently defined something new, a bulk propane facility. Yeah. Now currently, the way this was written here on the agenda is very confusing to me because it says to allow a bulk propane facility, but yet it wasn't defined until right now at this meeting. And to delete the provision for allowing propane storage in the CD zone. Well, I was kind of surprised when they left out bulk propane storage in the CD zone. So by defining what bulk propane facility is, if this board accepts that definition, well then bulk storage is something different.
That's right.
So it automatically negates any. There is no regulation right now that allows for a bulk propane facility. But if you define this bulk storage as a facility, just by defining it, everything goes away.
That's right.
Okay? Now, what you're doing in addition to this is that you want this facility to be allowed in an I-1 and I-2. Right now, bulk propane facilities are not allowed anywhere in Guilford. Is that correct? Is that correct? This new definition, if you adopt it, bulk propane facilities right now is not allowed anywhere. If you just adopt the definition, I want to know if that's correct or not.
My impression of it is if we adopt the definition as it states right there will be nothing.
Except for the existing facilities.
Except for the existing facilities that are grandfathered.
Exactly. So by just changing the definition, all of this goes away. Am I correct?
As far as I know.
Okay, it's a very simple thing. We can go here and start reviewing everything we did in wetlands and all of the safety procedures and everything else. But if we simply vote on this at this public hearing, if everyone's in agreement with that we want to accept this definition of bulk propane facilities, if it's adopted by this board, currently, just doing that, there is no provision in any of the zoning code that will allow that, unless you make an additional provision to allow it. Correct?
So Victor, as a citizen of Guilford, are you asking the Planning and Zoning Commission to vote right now on whether we want to accept this definition of bulk, propane bulk facility?
Yes.
Okay.
You can't do that, though. It has to go out for 2 public hearings. Yes, 2 hearings. You have to wait for 2 hearings.
Right, so this is the first, the next hearing would be the next one.
The third shows predisposition.
Okay.
Because we should, be fair, we should get people to speak for it.
Okay, so I would love to do that right now, personally, and as the chairman, but I can't because we have a 2-hearing rule. And just so that you all understand, because I want to explain it to you. And it's going to be kind of hard to say, but I'm going to say it. I'm going to be truthful with you.
It's hard for us to hear you.
This doesn't, I'll talk louder. This is for the mic, for the camera. So, when propane was originally approved by special permit on the west side of town, the notice in the paper was spotty. Unless you had a property map and unless you could decipher what property lines were, when you read the paper, you couldn't tell where it was. And that was unfortunate and not fair. And so in order to prevent that from ever happening again afterwards, we held a vote amongst ourselves that we want to give the people in this town adequate notice. And so we tied our hands a little bit on purpose. So we can't pass something important in one meeting. It has to go to 2 meetings. It has to go out on the town website. It has to get noticed by people because we're talking about it. So as much as I would like to do this right now, for all the right reasons, I can't do this right now. I want to, but I can't. And several of the other commissioners want to hear more information. They want to get more. I'd like you to share what you know. I think it's important. I also want to take a second out and get you to think about something. This affects you, and you're here tonight because it affects you. Things like this have affected our town for an awful long time. And when this came up on the west side of town, a bunch of really good people got involved with the town, they're still involved with the town now. And I would invite all of you to consider participating in this town, coming to meetings, attending these things, joining commissions and committees. I'm going to tell you that one of the conversations I had last night, we're winding down Route 1 West. The report was accepted, we received the report tonight, we're going to read it, we're going to think about it. It's a real nice report, talks about what they want to do, talks about how they want to get there. None of it is about, I don't want this in my yard. It's a well thought out, knowledgeable, good report. And it's going to be finished, and Route 1 West is kind of going to have a plan on how it's going to move forward. My personal opinion, the next place that's going to be under developmental pressure is Goose Lane. And if any of you live in that area or know someone who does, I would invite you to start thinking about maybe putting together a committee to think about how we would develop Goose Lane if we lived in that area. Because you should have a say in what's going on. The people on the West End realize that they could have a say on what's going on. This is America. This is a democracy. We are in control. So take the control and participate. It's important. It really matters that you do that. It's what we're all about here. All of us are just regular people. None of us get paid. I don't have any special skill set. I just happen to end up here. So, there's no limit to what you can do, and I really urge you to participate. So with that said, I can't hold a meeting. You're up. Give us some, and please come up, give us your name.
Pardon my parents.
You're good.
Bill knows where I came from. Okay, pardon my back here, I'll go here. So my name is Karen Tendler, and I live in Village Victoria, which is off Goose Lane. So I wrote down some thoughts. I also did send a letter, which I think it got sent to Mr. Kroll and I think to the committee here. But this is different. So zoning is a covenant between the town and its residents, and it's a promise that a homeowner's important financial and emotional investments will not be devalued by unexpected and undesirable changes in a community or a neighborhood. Zoning limits
what businesses and owners can do and creates important expectations about which activities are appropriate in particular locations and which are not. As Guilford has developed and become more residential, the I-1 and I-2 zones have become closer to where people live, work, and shop. And it is therefore sort of mystifying why the Planning and Zoning Committee would consider rule changes that would literally put people's homes and lives in danger. And this danger cannot be contained or dismissed. Human errors are always possible, and unfortunately in today's environment, so are acts of terrorism. And by the way, 30,000-gallon propane storage facilities are considered soft terrorist targets. So just something to think about. In about July 2014, this committee had many discussions. I went back into the minutes. And they had discussions and created regulations that govern the location of adult stores in Guilford. And at these meetings, I believe it was you, I don't know, last son, you said this will negatively impact our community. I'm going to go out on a limb and suggest that you probably didn't want those facilities in this town. And by the way, the zoning for those is 1,000 feet from a residential neighborhood. For these propane storage tanks, we're talking 100 feet, so it's a considerable distance. We just spent a considerable amount of time talking about preserving, I think you said, colonial Guilford, and we debated for about 20 minutes on public safety, on traffic flows at the Village Walk. We talked about light poles and the aestheticness of a light pole. We talked about signs on sidewalks and how unsightly they are. Well, I think that propane bulk storage tanks are ugly and also pose a safety hazard. Per the P&Z code, it's your responsibility to pass regulations that promote, and this is right out of your documents, that promote the health, the safety, and the welfare of the community. I-1 and I-2 zones in Guilford border residential neighborhoods, including my own. I would argue that the storage and distribution of bulk propane, which in the committee's own words on the proposed amendment, have the potential to be hazardous and to have an adverse impact on residential areas. You've had this debate before. We've had considerable people opposed to this. No one, I think, in this room, and other people that aren't even at this meeting, no one wants to live or work or shop or walk near a proposed bulk propane storage facility. And I think it's time that we put this matter to rest. And you do not have to make a change, as my neighbor said. You don't have to approve this. You can simply say, we do not allow for bulk propane storage in Guilford. That's it. Thank you.
So just to review your comments, you feel that it's a safety issue and that our basic charge from our supporting foundational documents are that we are solely to be concerned for the safety of the residents of Guilford.
The safety of the residents is a very important aspect of this, yes.
Good. So these are going to be key talking points. I'd like you to all remember them. In case we have a question, I'm going to ask you to jog our memories.
Sure.
Anyone else? You got a hand. Sid. Come on down.
Thank you. Before I offer my thoughts, I'd like to ask a few questions of the town planner.
Your name, sir?
Name is Sid Gale, Flagmarsh Road. I don't think I'm within the blast zone of the proposed regulation. First question. In the course of developing this regulation, this proposal, and the two prior proposals for propane that came before you, did you at any point in the time conduct a study to see what Guilford's energy needs, propane needs would be now and in the future to determine whether this is even necessary, such a facility is even necessary? Did you or anyone on staff who supports this commission? Okay. Secondly, At any time in these three events, the two fire applications and this plan effort, did you contact the ISO or any other risk management and underwriting national organizations to determine statistically what the actual incidence of failure are in the facilities or in the major distribution of services that support those facilities?
Did
Trucks
I?
coming in and out, yes.
I did not. No.
Or no member of your staff?
No.
Okay. Do we currently have an existing facility comparable to what this regulation proposes in Guilford today?
I'm not sure what you mean by
Do we have a major propane storage facility in Guilford today?
Yeah, yes.
And where's that located?
Soundview?
Okay, is that in a BE or an AE zone?
Yes.
Okay. Is that at risk being in a BE or AE zone?
Yes.
Okay, so we have a real current risk, but somehow we managed to live with it. Does that facility stand at risk at any time in the next 30 or 40 years of not being viable for any environmental reason? Is it your question now?
I don't know. I don't know what you mean by that.
Okay, let me be more specific. In the resilience plan, the coastal resilience plan that this commission just passed in prior meeting, was there not a study of the Soundview area which suggested that perhaps around 2050 that facility might be subject to regular flooding?
Yes.
And might be unsustainable in that location?
Yes.
Okay. So then we have the possibility that what we have today may not be able to stay there. And if it can't stay there, we have two choices resulting from that, correct? We have the possibility that it goes elsewhere in town, or the possibility that it doesn't go anywhere else in town, and it eventually closes.
Right now,
It's hypothetical.
but there's no place where it could go today under our current zoning except for Moose Hill Road and Route 1.
Okay, so that we lose a capacity that many of your planning committee members were discussing as a given, apparently because they were not made aware of this contingency by staff as they were working up this regulation. And so we face the fact that whatever supply we have today, forget what we may need in the future, may not be available at some point in time, and this option will close out. Is that a fair statement? And we're thinking long-term because that's what planners need to do, and land use
I think
commissions need to do.
that's probably one of the factors that the planning committee was considering. That the current facilities might not be sustainable long-term, and there might be a need to find other locations for them.
But no other locations were provided because, as you say, that facility couldn't go anywhere else in town.
Under our current regulations.
How about under this one?
Under the proposed regulation, they could.
Under the proposed regulation, you could. How much is in that facility now?
How many gallons?
What capacity does that facility have to carry propane?
Well, they're two separate facilities. They're two separate operators. I don't recall exactly.
Basically one area though, right?
Right.
One contained area.
Yes. I think there's 120,000 gallons total there now, I think.
That's a hunk of capacity. How much of that are we using?
I have no idea.
Okay. So,
I think, excuse me, I just think some of that's on railroad cars. So if you're looking for alternate places, the railroad cars wouldn't necessarily be there.
probably not.
Isn't that correct? Isn't part of that 160 gallon?
It's 160,000 and it is two rail cars.
It's two rail cars plus 60,000 in tanks.
Right, so...
Total 60,000.
And just, can I go off on a little tangent just for a second?
A little tangent. After all, this is your neighborhood.
Right, so New York Times yesterday was talking about railroad regulations on oil transport cars and that they're not adequate and that they need to be regulated. I am not sure of the propane regulations, but if the oil cars are not adequate, I can't imagine that the propane cars are. So that's something that I have often wondered about it. I was told that because it's regulated by the United States government under the Railroad Act, it's not our business, we can't change that. So just to put towards
It's not under our control, but it's definitely a concern.
Absolutely.
As would be the transport of chlorine through town of Guilford by rail, which is a risk, a very dangerous risk, if it ever were to go off the rails.
Right.
So we live with a great many risks that we don't even think about, and because we don't think of them, we don't think they exist. So, thank you, George, for putting up with the interrogation. I'll now go into a few observations. We talk about the risk of propane, and it has an intrinsic risk that cannot be denied. It's a horrific risk if it ever happens. But obviously, what the planning department and this commission and the subcommittee have not figured out is what is the real managed risk that we face. And that's an important issue. It's one that I brought before this commission in the first hearing of Sullivan. And I said to them then, how you decide this issue now will have considerable impact because it will come back to you in repeated ways in the future. And it won't just be the propane, I'll get into that in a minute. We are extending gas pipes all over town. In any 2-week period, somewhere in Connecticut, you will read that there is an evacuation of a quarter mile when somebody out the back row doesn't call 911 before, doesn't call before you dig, punctures gas. Yet we're allowing these natural gas pipelines to propagate through the center of our lovely historic district without too much expressed concern. Why do you think that is? I'll give you my guess. We don't see the risk. It's underground. If we don't see it, it's not a risk until it blows up, which it can at any time, probably with more frequency than propane facilities have been proposed. And you don't know that one way or another, neither do I, because nobody is bothered to do the due diligence to ask the right questions of the right people to get the right information and educate the public as to what the real risks are and what the hyperbolic rhetoric is by people who have an interest not so much in personal safety because they don't know what the risk is, but in property value and appearance. That's not a great way to make a decision. Let me give you a sense of coming attractions. Now, in California and Korea and Japan, they're talking a lot about developing propane cars, compressed gases they're called, which are already expanding in Western Europe as an alternative to gasoline and expensive diesel. They're also talking about hydrogen cars. Now, whatever you decide on propane tonight in terms of a bulk facility, I would offer to guess that in 5 or 10 years, some gas station in Guilford might come to you and say, we'd like to put in a hydrogen tank. What are you going to do then? How are you going to address that issue? All of them are right on the historic district. And we all know what you can use hydrogen for. You can make bombs. And what if a terrorist comes to Guilford and knows that we have a hydrogen tank at Mobile on the Run? And some night, he fixes it with an explosive device and blows up our entire historic district and ruins one of the gems of Western civilization. Yes, I'm being facetious, but that's the kind of rhetoric that we've heard in this town in trying to cogitate on the issue of a propane facility. And it will not be the last time to address this issue. We are a society that runs on energy. Any kind of energy has risks.
So your recommendation when it comes to this amendment is essentially the same as Ms. Plesiak's, which is that the current existing language be deleted.
No.
But that we not allow additional propane storage
No, that's not what I'm
elsewhere.
saying.
So which parts of this particular amendment
What I'm saying
are
is this.
appropriate for the,
I don't care which way the propane issue goes. I don't care which way the hydrogen issue goes. But as I said in 2013 at the first Sullivan hearing to this commission, I care very much about how due process goes. And I don't see it being reflected in the operation of the planning department or the planning commission or the town as a whole. And we've got to stop the public circus and start looking at rational analysis and fact-based analysis of issues that come before us, especially those that have long-term consequences. And it hasn't been done here, to the best of what I've been able to determine. And I don't think that this proposal is fit to go forward until you do that kind of analysis or any other that follows it in anything of comparable substance and seriousness.
So Sid, let me ask you a question. If that's true, and I'm not saying it's not true, but if that's true, would it be prudent to not allow any additional propane storage until we get those questions answered?
Yes.
Because
do the due diligence and let the facts guide your judgment, but don't make judgment on ill-informed opinion. And that's what I see and read in your planning committee minutes.
And in the meantime, don't allow anything, because it would be very difficult to take away if we allow it in the information gathering.
You have the luxury of time to make that decision. It's very difficult to undo the consequences, whatever they may be. And once again, just to correct Mr. Corbier, so that there's no misunderstanding, I'm not taking a side on the propane issue. I'm adamant in advocating for a sound process and fact-based decision-making, and it's not happening here, and it's not the first time. Thank you.
Thanks, Sid. Appreciate it. So just to review what Sid said, and if I'm getting it right, until the decision can be made that's fact-based, we probably should hold off on any new development. Is that correct, Sid?
I think that's correct, yeah.
Thank you. All right. Who else wants to talk?
I do.
Please, Joyce.
My name is Pat Stokely, and I live in Village, Victoria. I am not an engineer. I'm not very smart. But I listened to Mr. Kroll read that report that said within 100 feet of a home. Would that be Mr. Kroll's home? Would you think that was a good thing? I frankly am terrified that you would be happy to have it 100 feet from someone's home. There is no control over how much. You have a 30,000 tank, but do you have trucks sitting on the property that are full? Are they going to go down in Goose Lane? You know, I don't feel that the answers have been given to us about the safety for the people around. And another thing I would like to know, why do we have to do it? Why is this even before us? No one's ever put that out there for me. So I'm sitting here tonight, not hearing anything that convinces me you guys know what's good for me. I find it frightening. So you have a half a mile to evacuate if there's a problem. What if I'm 100 feet away? Am I going to get out? I mean, I just think it's cruel to pick one area and say, all the people around you, we don't care so much. Thank you.
Thank you. So, and again, you know, to make it more of a discussion, you know, you make valid points. And so it has been asked, or not mentioned to me, that it needs to be available somewhere in town.
Why wasn't it put in the West End? Why wasn't it put by the historic district? What are those reasons, and why are the reasons different? What has changed? You wanted, somebody made a proposal to put it in the historic district, and you guys said no. Well, on what basis was it?
The reason that the Sullivan application was denied on River Street there, the reason I voted no against it was that it was not a permitted use. Fuel oil storage is a permitted use. There was some other use, but propane we determined is not the same thing as fuel oil, so it was not a permitted use. That's why it was denied.
So why wouldn't you change the zoning to allow permitted use of propane on that property, and that would solve the problem?
They chose not to do that. They wanted to move to the other location on Route 1.
So it had nothing to do with the so and then
No.
why did you reject the proposal in the West End? What was that based on?
The proposal on the West End was
didn't
rejected.
reject
They withdrew the
Never
application
rejected.
They withdrew the application.
and went up to North Branford. So it
Okay,
never
why do you
got
think
that
the people in North Branford rejected it?
They haven't rejected it. It's still pending. So, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure because they're frightened of having propane next to them.
But do you see how it looks to us that you are not dealing with an application from Sullivan, are you?
Not here.
You are changing a regulation
So that
and a zoning regulation that affects so many of us, for what?
Well, nobody's
Just in
changing.
case someone does come and say, I want to build a
Nobody's
storage
changing
tank?
anything yet. What we're doing is having a public hearing to get the input from people, which is going to allow us to judge should or should not. It should not be changed. Nobody's changing anything yet. That's why we're having the hearing.
But there's a proposal to change the...
That's right. What happened is, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe it was sent to the planning committee to study this because Sullivan's come in, there may be other people that come in the future that want to put a propane facility in. We don't have any regulations now which really say yay or nay. There's only that one piece of property on Route 1 West, which the Sullivans have chosen not to develop. We thought it would be a good idea to do some planning so that you could either say there isn't going to be any more, there can't be some more with these regulations, or we shouldn't do any regulations. So I guess what the planning committee, who was asked to study this, came back and said is, let's take a look at it. This is the best that we can come up with. It then goes out for public hearing, which is what's happening tonight to get the public's input.
So the planning is doing this in case J.J. Sullivan wants to...
No, I think...
But that's what you...
No, it's not what I said. I said in case someone in the future wants to put another facility in, they ought to know, one, that they can't do it, in which case they're not going to waste any more time here. And if it is allowed, these are specifically the regulations that you have to meet in order to do it.
So the 100 feet is really the regulation that you think is appropriate?
I don't think anything yet.
But that's
why
what's
I'm waiting.
proposed?
No, well, that's what's proposed, but that doesn't mean anybody here is voting for it yet. We're waiting. Maybe it should be 500 feet, maybe it should be 1,000, maybe it shouldn't be any more, period.
Maybe it shouldn't be at all.
That's right. I agree with you. So that's what we're trying to gather information for tonight. So that's the purpose of the public hearing, is to listen to people, take their input, and then deliberate on it and come to a conclusion. But it's not a fait accompli or anything. That's why it was studied. And you're right, the decision of this commission may very well be, there is no more in town. That's a possibility, based on the facts that come before us. I should think, though, we would want more input. So is there anybody else who'd like to speak? I've done enough talking. Rich?
Please, Grass.
Sandra Diaz, 5 Jamestown Drive, Guilford. Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, thank you for this opportunity. I have to say I am a bit confused. My purpose tonight has been a bit deterred. If I may go back, I have been involved. I am a West End resident, and as the crow flies, I'm about 0.38 miles from 2772 Boston Post Road, which has been known as the Sullivan application. I wasn't aware, Commissioner Bauer, that they had retracted. I have been assuming that they have a period of time to apply for as long as they're inland wetlands.
They've never applied.
They haven't applied, but it's a possibility.
There is a possibility they could apply as long as that is permitted use in that particular piece of property.
Yes,
You're
which
right.
it
You're absolutely right.
currently is.
Which is why one of the proposals here is to remove that.
To remove that?
Yes.
Thank you. My concern is when I started participating to listen what was going on in my end of town, April of 2014, I started attending Route 1 West to find out more facts. And as that progressed, I started attending planning and zoning. Actually started attending Inland Wetlands Commission meetings when the application from J.J. Sullivan 2772 BPR LLC actually was being deliberated and public hearings were going on. From that time, once passed through there, I did start attending planning committee meetings, your subcommittee. And at that point, there was a deliberation going on during last summer, and I did submit letters to the planning subcommittee on July 9th two in August and one in September, while they were discussing the subject of limiting propane. And I believe through that, and part of my submissions were first taking the text amendment from October of 2013, when the allowance of bulk storage of propane in the West End in that one parcel was allowed, and the reasons for why. And I submitted a document called Connecticut's Regulation of Propane. It was a legislative review document issued in 2011, and it gave a bit of a history of propane regulations in Connecticut, most from a consumer standpoint, but also had a lot of good information about the industry in general. And I found issues in there that I brought to the attention of the planning committee that concerned me and were in contrast to the reasons for passing the text amendment back in 2013. I also submitted, as the planning committee was deliberating, some accidents and such of local in Killingworth and Madison, and I had also referred to our own incident back in Guilford in 2006. And I also submitted some information where I did not deem that propane was the magic bullet to our energy needs. As Mr. Gale was mentioning, that in one of our meetings during the planning committee that I knew of, our energy task force, I was asking if maybe they should be involved, if there was some information. And we talked about, I believe, I agreed with Mr. Paul that there is a topsy-turvy industry and we really don't know the direction. So should we be investing so much in propane? As a result of that, I believe the planning committee did propose to the commission that they decided there shouldn't be any expansion and wanted to remove the allowance in the CD zone, if I am correct. I did not speak at those public hearings. I believe that my fellow residents did a great job, and I believe it was not approved to remove that language and that allowability in the CD zone. So I am here now with the intent that the commission has deemed there is a need for propane storage somewhere in town. So I'm letting my personal feelings with the other residents. I'm not a proponent of propane. I don't believe that I see this great need long-term. If we have enough for a current long-term on Soundview, I'm okay with that. And I'm willing to take the risk of not investing any more of the town properties to store bulk propane. With that said, I did want to be specific tonight just to present to you what this amendment states, the appropriateness of bulk storage if it is deemed that it has to be the appropriateness in an I zone versus the current CD zone. So that's what I had prepared for you tonight. I would like to read it. I still, to my neighbors in their I zones, I apologize, I don't know the I zones as well as you do. So I don't mean to offend or say that your properties are less valuable than mine, but I am just presenting from the perspective that the CD zone, the elimination of propane has already been rejected or denied currently by the commission, and that there is some need that I wanted to address, and that the appropriateness may be in other zones rather than the CD. So if I may continue, I'm sorry, I just wanted to preface, and if I may say, I do have two other letters, correspondences prepared that I would like to present or maybe email to you this week and then discuss. I didn't want to take too much time tonight with all of my issues, but those relate to security and safety and basically separation distances, which I have issues with in reading. I have read, I know the town has at times gotten federal community block grants. There's some HUD documentation where 1,000-foot separation, if it's a HUD-funded project, the feds require that type of separation distance. They have calculations on fire hazard as well as explosion hazard because propane has both its properties. And I have that example, and I will present that. So I do have concerns about separation distances, 100-foot versus larger separation distances. And also, my other would be comments about accidents and the potential. So with that said, I do have serious concerns, but I do just want to talk about zones tonight. And I did bring with me 7 copies of what I'm presenting or speaking from tonight, as well as this is just hard copy documentation to support some of the facts that I explain in there. So that is just for the record as well. And again, I feel I've gone much too long, and I appreciate your time, but I will read from this just for efficiency's sake. To Town Guilford Planning and Zoning, Santa Dia, Jamestown Drive, a resident of Guilford for 28 years. Good evening, Chairman Meyer and Commissioners. I would like to state for the record my support of this agenda item, amending the zoning code 273-2, Table 5, to delete from 273-21C provisions allowing propane storage in the CD zone, and to add 273-96 to allow propane bulk facilities by special permit in the industrial zone of I-1 and I-2 as a result of my own research and attendance at various towns commission meetings over the past year. Now, I must say, with the definition that was just read by Mr. Kroll about propane bulk facilities, I don't know if I'm going to get myself into trouble, but to me that still means what is allowed in the CD zone, bulk storage of propane. So if I'm confusing the issue, please tell me. My interest in this topic arose from learning in February 2014 that a parcel of land at 2772 Boston Post Road in the CD zone in the west end of town, along a major thoroughfare of US Route 1, referred to in Guilford's current plan of conservation and development as serving as the western gateway to town, had uncharacteristically been zoned to allow the bulk storage of propane by special permit after the submission of a text amendment requesting such from a lone self-serving applicant and not the result of a town study or impact analysis. Attempting to learn all I could about what I believe to be an inappropriate use for this parcel of land, as I envision safety and security issues, curb future economic growth in the area, including deter tourism, as well as an overall detrimental impact to the town's reputation, I voraciously began to educate myself. My concerns regarding deterred tourism, if I may digress, as well as deterred future economic growth in this area were ignited when recognizing that tourism in Guilford is vital. In reading the town's annual audit report for the fiscal year ended June 30, 2014, it is stated that major employers in Guilford include municipal, retail, healthcare, tourist services, and light manufacturing companies. A recent quote out of the Guilford Economic Development Office appearing in the New Haven Register on the heels of Nick Freddy and his American Idleman stated, quote, "If people have the right attitude about Guilford and they're going to come here and visit, shop, stroll, then it's going to help the economy," end quote. I agree, but widely visible propane bulk storage tanks situated on this parcel along the main travel artery of US Route 1 not going to give the public the right attitude about our town. In addition, dedicated internet sites such as historicroute1.com and roadtrippers.com exist with the sole purpose of serving as travel guides along historic US Route 1, mentioning notable sites in Guilford, even prior to Guilford's newfound enviable depiction and exposure to millions of viewers on national TV during the American Idol hometown visit segment 2 weeks ago. We are on people's radar, just simply considering its far-reaching circulation. A New York Times article dated July 9/12, titled "On Connecticut's Quiet Coast Reports to Throngs of Readers." Sure, quote, "You can blast over the New York-Connecticut border on I-95 and reach Rhode Island in about 2 hours, but what's the point of that? The magic is in the sights, smells, and tastes waiting to be discovered along those 253 miles. The author continues, "The stretch along Route 1 from Guilford to Old Saybrook is one of my favorites." And lastly to note, Guilford's US Route 1 serves as the primary offload route for I-95 north and south at exits 57, 58, 59 in times of high weekend and seasonal traffic congestion, accident backups, and construction delays, exposing this parcel in the CD zone to thousands of new travelers, not to mention the increased exposure this parcel will receive with the arrival of Guilford Commons, Tractor Supply, and a possible new Costco store located at exits 56 and Brantford. My concern is that on these wide-reaching websites and in the face of thousands of new and existing travelers passing by a propane bulk storage facility on this parcel in the CD zone, Guilford would become unflatteringly known as home of behemoth-sized bullet-shaped containers of thousands of gallons of ignitable propane, certainly not as innocuous as along other U.S. roadsides as the world's largest ball of twine. And elicit a perceived what were they thinking response by the general public as well as future developers of town governance and best practices, or worse, elicit a more ominous response by thrill seekers and other individuals with malicious intent. Along with this and other various concerns I have on the subject of bulk propane storage on this parcel, which I believe have bearing, I will now stay focused simply addressing my thoughts as to why I favor the appropriateness of the I-1 and I-2 zones versus inappropriateness of the CD zone for this type of facility. I present the following Connecticut Town's regulations regarding bulk storage of propane or bottled gas that it is referred to by some towns for your consideration to corroborate the appropriateness of locating propane bulk storage facilities in industrial zones. The Town of Branford zoning regulations, section 4.8K, storage related uses, item 2, commercial storage, sale, and distribution of fuel and bottled gas, excluding tanks for petroleum products having a capacity in excess of 10,000 gallons, are permitted with site plan in the general industry IG1 and IG2 zones, but not permitted in the center business, restricted business, local business, mixed use, or commerce park zoning districts. The Town of Montville, on page 59 of their zoning regulations, section 14.2.3, industrial I district permitted uses, notes bulk storage of fuel oil, coal, bottled gas, and other open storage yards. The Town of Plainfield, on page 39 of their zoning regulations, section 9.41-K, special permit uses in the I-1 industrial district. Notes gas dealers and the above-ground storage of bottled gas subject to the Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection, fire marshal approval, and compliance with NFPA 58. The Town of Cheshire, on page 30-28, section 30, schedule A, permitted uses, permitted use 64A, in the I-1 zone by special permit, I-2 zone by site plan, and in its most intensive commercial zone, which is not a transitional zone and does not abut residential areas, by special permit states commercial storage and sale of fuel and bottled gas. And in the Town of North Branford, effective 9/5/14, a permitted use in their industrial I-2 zone now allows for the bulk storage of propane on parcels of land south of Route 80 east of Sierra Road and bounded on all sides at the time of application by similarly zoned properties. In addition, in North Branford, a commendable proposed text amendment is currently under review by North Branford PZC, requesting limits on combined volumes of liquid natural gas, including propane, within a radius of other similar facilities and providing for fire protection over and above the minimum required by state and federal law in order, as the request states, to set in place reasonable health and safety regulations and performance standards regarding the storage of liquid natural gas, including propane, to decrease fire and explosion hazards and to safeguard real property values and the quiet enjoyment of neighboring property. Secondly, for your consideration, by way of comparison to convey the suitability of locating propane bulk storage facilities in industrial zones, I performed my own visual inspection of 3 local industrial zones. Last spring, I drove the length of Guilford Soundview Road industrial zone to find at the end the bulk propane storage facility there. This was shortly after learning about its existence in an issue of the Guilford Courier, never knowing it even existed, as I suspect ideal for safety and security reasons, sequestered away from everyday view in an inconspicuous, discreet location where tourists and the community at large need not travel by nor live beside every day. And this past month, I drove the length of North Branford Sierra Road, as mentioned above, located off Route 80, located in North Branford's industrial I-2 zone, where the town has received application for propane bulk storage installation. And I drove the length of Cheshire Schoolhouse Road, located off Route 10, located in Cheshire's industrial I-zone, where at 280 Schoolhouse Road, Arbor Energy has on site a 30,000-gallon above-ground propane storage tank. And I believe that's on 5.88 acres. The site of the planned installation in North Branford and the current propane bulk storage installations on Soundview Road in Guilford and on Schoolhouse Road in Cheshire appear by my own visual inspection in stark contrast to the parcel allowed for propane bulk storage in the Guilford CD zone on Route 1. Most notably, these I zones consist of compatible types of land use, exhibit extremely limited traffic flow, are topographically generally level terrain with good sight lines, are sufficiently set back by physical distance, set away from view from main travel arteries, and do not, or at the very least, do not appear to abut or be in close proximity to residential properties. Lastly, what really drove home the point for me that propane bulk storage installations do not belong in the CD zone was a discussion that arose during the February 19, 2015 North Branford PCC public hearing regarding the above-mentioned proposed zoning regulation text amendment to limit, including by size, installations of propane bulk storage in the remaining North Branford I-2 zone lots on Sierra Road. During that public hearing, after the applicant's attorney, a noted environmental and land use attorney, elaborated on the reasons for the proposed text amendment, and after the fire protection expert spoke regarding different levels of associated risks, a question was raised by PCC as to why the text amendment's projections excluded lesser-sized propane storage tanks, those 1,500 gallons or less. As the PCC intimated, safety concerns for patrons eating out at restaurants or working at facilities in the Northford section of town, whereas physically observed a 1,000-gallon propane tank and 3 500-gallon propane tanks located behind a strip mall and single store respectively used for consumption. The answer I interpreted from the attorney and fire protection expert was that the proposed text amendment is not aimed to ban propane, but considering its volatile, elusive, and explosive properties, is aimed to mitigate risk in the most risky of settings, which is at propane bulk storage distribution installations. The frequency of loading and offloading propane at these installations, in addition to propane delivery transport tankers carrying 7,000 to 12,000 gallons of propane and bobtails carrying 1,000 to 5,000 gallons of propane, entering and exiting the facility, as well as interwoven third-party community at large drivers, is where the high risk is. A distribution facility has, quote, activity, and that's what makes it riskier. Propane tanks with its contents used for consumption, such as those behind a strip mall, have much less risk as there is less activity. In my own estimation, I would agree that patrons of restaurants and shift workers do have less risk in that situation, as exposure is for a limited, intermittent amount of time, not 24/7. And in the case of an accidental leak or fire, these individuals have the ability to evacuate to the sanctity of their homes. In contrast, it is the 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week residents living in close proximity to an active propane bulk storage distribution installation and along its supply and distribution routes, as in the case in the Guilford CD zone along Route 1, that bear an imposed, unacceptable, significant, and unnecessary risk. That is why I believe it is essential to delete from 273-21C the provision to allow propane storage in the CD zone and support limiting these risks by the addition of 27396 to allow propane bulk facilities by special permit in the industrial zones I-1 and I-2, where the risk exposure is much less. By limiting these risks, we limit potential future costs to the town and its taxpayers for increased police safety patrols, for increased emergency response calls from anxious residents now living in close proximity to a propane bulk storage facility, for possible increases in the local fire marshal's enforcement/inspection responsibilities to monitor the propane installation's compliance with the state fire prevention code, for increased emergency response services in accident situations, or for possible increased insurance costs. We're limiting risk. We limit potential future costs to its residents for diminished quality of life and risk of actual loss, personal and real property values. And by limiting risk, we limit potential future costs to area businesses for lost business due to evacuations and or decreased tourism dollars due to a public perception of danger under the perception is reality phenomenon. And although I believe safety and security concerns surrounding a bulk propane storage facility are considerable, I will discuss the 2 other correspondences that I will submit to this commission during the duration of the public hearings. I do believe the risks surrounding these types of facilities can be greatly reduced by locating them in an appropriately zoned location, such as the I-1 or I-2 zones rather than the CD commercial design district. In closing, I understand for as much as we all enjoy and relish our town's unique character and reputation, unfortunately, due to its distinctive topography, major wetlands, and lack of public sewer system, we may find ourselves challenged in attracting certain desirable economic development. But let us not be so distressed for economic development that we abandon our moral compass and social conscience and lose sight of the overarching goals and principles of Guilford's plan of conservation and development. Let us adopt this amendment and place appropriate compatible development in appropriate zones. I hope you agree. Thank you for your time. Respectfully submitted. Sandra Diaz. Thank you.
Thank you, Sandra. Nice work.
So, a couple of the
The previous members of the public said, why don't you just delete, why don't you just delete the language that allows propane in that single parcel over on the west end and don't do anything else. And we, some number of months ago, with very little discussion, that actually did come before us, and I moved to delete that language. And Richard Meyer seconded it, and the motion failed alone by itself with very little discussion. And I don't really know why that is, but I think that the reasoning for that might be important to us or to the public. What do you think? Because I didn't really see any reason.
What I think you're being out of order and unfair.
Okay.
That's what I think.
But what was the reasoning for that vote?
Tom doesn't feel comfortable discussing that right now, and it is inappropriate to put him on the spot, so I'm just going to...
For any of us that voted.
Ultimately, we need to know the reason why that was the case, because that vote already took place. That vote is done, and 4 of the 5 people who voted are here. I just thought that it was very strange for us, and that I thought that it was going to pass unanimously. I was very surprised
I would like to hear that.
at the outcome.
Yeah, I would answer as well.
But ultimately,
yes.
it did not pass, and that's why we're still here.
What was the question that was up for proposal? Could
It
you?
was delete.
It was to delete the
It
propane
was the end
storage.
of the
Okay, that.
current motion.
And it did come
We
before
were
us, we did
considering
vote on it.
other options for possibly for the future, which was the front page, but the second page is exactly what the motion was, which was to delete that language. And that's on the public record, it's in the meeting minutes. But we didn't have a lot of discussion at the time, and I don't know, I still haven't heard a reason for that.
We have a member of the public who wants to speak.
Hi, Ed Dinsey, 2751 Boston Post Road. This is an issue that actually got me involved. I'm on a few different committees. Rich's suggestion that people on Goose Lane get involved. Once you do, you'll be involved. I'm speaking from my heart. There's nothing I have prepared. It's really easy for me to say, not in my front yard, because that's where the one section that allows propane would be. Having sat on these committees, Chairman Meyer knows how much I've gone back and forth, the issue of right of property owner versus neighbors in general. Like I said, it's really easy for me to say, not in my front yard, go ahead and put it on Goose Lane, but I understand where they're coming from. I look at these proposals that George presented, and let's take the 100-foot property line setback. As of now, it's what, 50 feet?
I think it may be 25.
25? I mean, it is a vast improvement over what exists. I think that what we're looking at here is a compromise between nothing and what exists. It may not be good, and here again, it'd be easy for me to say, let's go for it, because it gets it out of my backyard or front yard. I seriously think this is something we should look at. Not that long ago, the town looked at adult entertainment, and the fact that there had to be a place for it could very well be there has to be a place for this also.
We already have a place though.
Yes, we have one place, and I would like to remind everyone here and the committee that there is a lawsuit over spot zoning. The town's own council, when questioned, did state that if the wording was removed,
the lawsuit goes away. There's no repercussions. And I guess that's all I have to say, because like I said, I didn't prepare this. I'm speaking from the heart and experience. And once again, get involved. I mean, there's a lot of things that appear funny because you think it's the same people in all these committees. Unfortunately, it is the same people because there aren't enough people to divide it amongst. That's all I have to say.
Thank you. And just to touch on that for a second, you know, this is your government. This belongs to you. We serve you. And we ask you to participate and get involved. This propane thing has been going on since I've been on planning and zoning. My very first meeting, my very first vote was about this propane. And it's still going on, and now I'm the chairman. You know, Walter is correct. We did have a vote to eliminate these words that allowed that.
And we didn't really give our reasoning for why we decided not to do that.
And I don't understand that, but that's okay. The rule of democracy, and I used the words at the time, this is a democracy. There are 7 commissioners that voted. The group that wanted to eliminate the wording was overruled by a majority of people. That vote's going to come up in 2 weeks when we have our next meeting. We're going to vote. We're going to talk about that.
Is this still a public hearing?
Yes, ma'am, you can talk.
Because I've been waiting, as I think some other people have, for a very long time.
Go ahead.
My name is Ann McIntyre Lawner. I live at 2577 Boston Post Road in the blast zone from where you have currently allowed propane. And first, I want to thank you for your service, because I know you're all doing this as volunteers, and I know that no good deed goes unpunished, so I do appreciate the fact that you're serving. And when you made the decision to allow propane across the street from my neighbor Ed's house, you did wrong by us. You did wrong by all the citizens who bought property, who live there, who made honest investments in our future. And now you have a chance to fix that wrong. And I don't want it to happen at the expense of my neighbors at the other end of town, because that would be doing wrong by them. Mr. Bauer, you said earlier that perhaps it could come up that there's a vote where we decide that no more propane comes into Guilford.
That's right.
And that's what I want you to do. As a citizen, as a taxpayer, as a resident, as a mom, I want you to fix the mistake. I think you have an awesome opportunity to be able to do that, and probably to be able to avoid wasting more of our tax dollars on an unnecessary lawsuit if you fix it and do the right thing. And that's what I would like you to do, and I appreciate the opportunity for letting me speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. Who else? Dawn.
Dawn Williams, 137 Jefferson Drive, Guilford. I never thought this would turn into the Game of Thrones night, but, and I don't watch the show, but I think that this is pretty interesting. I'm just going to piggyback on what Ann said and what Ed said. I came tonight to support this change and to put it into the industrial zones. It did seem like it was a good choice. I did not look at how close it was to residences, and I must admit that. I feel your pain though, because what the newbies, our East Enders, our folks from the center of town don't understand is that what the board is charged with, what the commission is charged with, is that you have a business owner who will come to the town. This is what we saw with adult entertainment. They come to town and they say, I want to develop this property. I want to put my business here. And they have a right to do that, just as we have a right to be residents in this town. So I understand that dynamic. But as Ann said, we have to think of some way of making this better so that everybody is very happy with what happens. And this is not just something that may not affect us. This may affect us strongly because, as an earlier resident said, it's going to be a big blast, and it's going to be something that we have to deal with emergency and so on. So I'm just hoping that you take it out of CD because, yes, I live within that blast zone, and somehow make it better for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Who else would like to talk? You.
Donna Crescenzo, 199 Goose Lane. I haven't studied this very much, although I did a lot of reading of letters to the editor a few years ago. I just think that, as Sid Gale pointed out, that this is not yet well studied in terms of safety. We don't really have the facts. That there's a few things that are factual. If there is a problem, the people that will respond to that problem are our fire department and our hospital, our heliport, all of which would be affected by the problem and would be totally unavailable to us. So it seems to me rather naive to be considering putting anything that could be potentially dangerous into those settings. And the other is that we have shown time and again that the intersection of Route 1 and Exit 59 is one of the most dangerous areas of this town in terms of its traffic accidents. And although we have tried to put traffic lights there, it's notorious for people running that light. People come around Route 1 turn north on Goose Lane, and I myself have made that mistake of being distracted and forgetting that there's a light there. You know, it's a very, very busy place, and to have not only one to the south, propane truck site, but now to create one to the north would seem to me to be incredibly poorly planned. And, you know, there's got to be, irresponsible is probably a better word. So, being a physician, I just think that we need to be a little bit more reasonable. Yes, maybe they're industrial places, but they are hardly industrial by most terms of industrial. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you, ma'am. Who else would like to talk? Young lady.
Annette Sharp, and I live next to Montana's. I have one question, and I may be out of the loop, but if Sullivan came today and wanted to go back to that property, is he allowed to do that?
Yes.
He could file an application.
He could file an application.
If he still has the rights to that property. I don't know. They could even purchase the property, but somebody could buy that property and then file an application here.
But right now, it stands that he could conceivably
He could
put
file
the
an
propane facility.
application. Well, no, then he'd have to come here because it's a special permit for another public hearing, just like we're having here tonight. So he couldn't do it as a matter of right. Anybody who wants to buy that property could file an application for a special permit to be allowed to do the bulk storage propane. But because it's a special permit, they'd have to come to a meeting like this and we'd all have the opportunity to comment. I understand they have to meet the special permit requirements in order for us to grant that.
It seems kind of ironic because when they originally started, I never received a notice. I'm one of the closest neighbors. I did receive one postcard 1 month late, and I got a certified letter that was a month and a half late. That was the only notice I had. I didn't even have a chance to come to meetings.
And that's why we changed the regulation. So for example, tonight, this is going out to public hearing. We cannot vote on this tonight. Well, if we had the same regulations in place back then, what would have happened is that hearing would have occurred, and then hopefully the word would have spread so that people could have come in for the next public meeting to voice their opinion.
Don't you have to legally do it?
There's a...
So we didn't do it legally?
No, I'm not saying that.
Sounds to me like that's what you're saying.
No, they filed...
If you have to mail a letter, you have to let the people know, you have to let the people know. Either it is a rule or not.
May we have your name, sir, your name and address?
Yeah,
Richard Hall, 1876 Who's so moved?
Thank you.
The regulations at the time for what they were doing did not require that. Okay, now that is the subject of a lawsuit that the homeowners association has filed. The lawsuit that's been filed against the town by the homeowners in that area is not about spot zoning, it's about inadequate notice. So that is being litigated. So is it or isn't it, I don't know the answer. That's what's being litigated in court. And if that lawsuit would go forward, we might get an answer. But according to the applicant, they follow the regulations as they then existed for notice. They didn't have to notice all the abutting owners because you couldn't identify necessarily all the abutting owners. It was the rationale, and we've changed that.
Sir, let me...
They follow it. I know it doesn't sound right.
Let me jump in for a second. The way it was designed, the way the application was designed...
I agree with you. You should have got notice.
The way the application was designed is, it's like the difference between saying the third person at the table, which would be Richard, versus saying anybody with the initials RW who is to the left of someone who is taller than 6 feet, who is on this side of the table. And that's what the text says. It says bulk storage and retail sale of propane on parcels of land containing less than 4 acres located west of Westlake Avenue and south of Route 1 in a CD zone are permitted. And that was what they were asking for. And by doing that, instead of naming the parcel, I believe they were saying that they didn't have to notice anything.
That's right, because you couldn't necessarily identify all the parcels that meet that requirement.
Even though, in fact, as Ray said at the time at that meeting, there is only one parcel affected.
Right. So I agree with you that you should have gotten notice, and I hope we fix that. But that's exactly what the issue in that lawsuit is all about, was adequate notice given. The homeowners were saying it wasn't. The applicant was saying it was. But that's probably going to be moot anyways, because that lawsuit's probably not going to go forward, especially if we take it away from the CD zone. The issue's moot, and the court probably won't go forward with it.
Can I ask, other than the lawsuit, is there any reason why you would delete it from the CD zone? What is the impetus? What is driving you to do that, aside from the lawsuit?
Just that we don't think it's appropriate to be in that zone.
Why? Because it's in our front yard.
No, it's not because it's in anybody's front yard. It's just because we don't, if it's voted for, it's because people, the majority of the commissioners feel, for whatever the reasons are, that it's not appropriate there.
So it's not appropriate to be there, but it's appropriate to be here.
Nobody's saying that.
So that's what I'm trying to figure out, what the position is of the board. Why would you so strongly recommend removing it from one area and putting it in another area? I don't understand the logic.
I think the rationale would be is if the commission determines that it's more appropriate to put it in the industrial zones, which they haven't done yet, but if they determine that, then they would vote for that regulation and remove it for the other zones.
So the industrial zone where it's daycare right now, I think it's moderate.
I'm not saying we're going to do it.
No, but
I'm
it's
just saying
daycare,
that's the
hospital, what else is in there? Police and firemen. So it's appropriate to put it in it's not really an industrial zone.
Nobody said it's appropriate, okay? We're getting input from everybody to convey to the commission so that they can vote intelligently on this.
You know, it's hard to believe going down that you classify Goose Lane as an industrial area.
It's not. It
really is many homes on that road. And what industry is there is just small. You know, it's not
like yours, it's moderate.
Well, those are the points you should be making here, so that you inform us of that, so we make the right decision. But nobody's made a decision yet.
But we've made a couple of decisions already in the past.
My name's Pat Todd. I live on 18 Fair Street. I just came out of curiosity tonight. I know, I apologize. But I've started my interest in propane in Guilford when I heard about Sullivan going to develop 2 30,000 tanks on River Street. And it was quite by accident. I was in the Town Hall Extension, and there was a notice there, a letter. I went to the extension to read about this application, and there was a letter in the application file from a man in Chester explaining why the application for bulk propane facility was rejected in Chester. And he described explosions and everything like that. And I got very, very involved and came to every hearing. Do you have any idea how many years ago that was?
6.
6 years? How many of you were on this commission at that time? So you've heard all this before. There's nothing new. We've had experts come in from Hartford. It just went on for years. We still have an attorney from that one. And we're waiting for Sullivan to come up with a site plan to develop that property as a bulk storage. I mean, that's still in abeyance. So how many more years is Guilford going to debate, and you're going to waste your time with propane storage?
Yeah, my name is Doug Stokely. I too live in Village Victoria, right off Goose Lane. And I thought that the young lady that started the evening off, her comments were probably very succinct and to the point and summarized what all of us feel. And most of the comments that I'm getting from people around town, and believe me, we've been talking propane in this town for the last 6 years. No one has really been given a real good explanation as to why we want bulk storage in Guilford to begin with. I don't know that that question has been asked. I don't know if it has. I've not heard the answer as to why we feel bulk storage is required of 30,000 gallon capacity.
So, sir, can I ask that question of anyone in the audience? Is there anyone here who thinks that propane should be stored in Guilford? Anyone at all?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to ask the commissioners if they have any thoughts on this. I'm not asking for prejudicial views. I'm just asking for one good reason why propane should be stored in this town. Does anyone have a thought on that? I'm on the limb and I'm very close to doing something.
I'm not saying it should or shouldn't be, but there's apparently some people who want to spend money to put a facility in because they feel there's a market for it, okay?
Is that the reason?
That's the reason why we're here, in the sense that there's no regulation saying they can or can't do it. So I'm not saying that's a good reason, I'm just saying that's what's driven this process for the last 6 years.
Okay. Ed?
I hate to say it, but I got your answer. I don't want to have your answer, but I have your answer.
What is it?
Property owners do have rights.
That's right. And you know, it's really hard. I don't know, it's really hard to do this because property owners have rights. We discuss this amongst ourselves all the time. You know, it could be something not related to propane. You know, we can have someone who wants to put a building up in town and it is going to look horrendous. And the question is, if he owns the property or they own the property, do they have the right to do whatever they want, or does the town have the right to decide what they can do, even though the town doesn't own the property? And, you know, we kick that around back and forth. Unfortunately, the law is we are empowered by the state of Connecticut as the commissioners to make these decisions. And they want us to not know the answer. They want us to be confused. They want us to argue amongst ourselves. They want us to fight. They want us to yell. They want us to get emotional. That's the idea. That's the plan. So that at the end, it's vetted, it's talked about, disagreements have been heard, and we wrestle with this decision. I can tell you that I sometimes lay awake at night all night long because I'm wrestling with these decisions. It's horrible. But it's what I ended up doing, and I don't know why. I think it was your fault. But, you know, whatever we decide, you guys need to know that we work for you. You know, we serve you, the people of Guilford. This is a democracy. You people elect people who appoint us. So if you don't like what we do, remember that on Election Day. It's a tough world out there, but we can't change, these people in this room and you, we probably can't change what's going to go on in Washington. I said this last night. We can't change what's going to go on in Washington. We can't change what's going to go on in Hartford. But I'm going to give it my best shot to make sure that in this town, your voices are heard. It's going to be hard. It is hard sometimes. I wrestle with it. But I am committed, and I will make this commitment to you over and over and over again, that I will do what you want me to do, without regard to what I want to do. So give me more reasons. Talk with me more about propane.
If I may, Tony Capiro, 462 Granite Road. I think this gentleman hit the nail right on the head. We have spent 6 years discussing this matter with this commission, be it on River Street, on the west end, and now potentially on the east end. And this commission has heard from the majority of the public in this town. They do not want bulk propane in the east, in the west, in the center of town. It's just that simple. We are astonished to find that we have more bulk propane in this town existing than anywhere.
Than any other state, any other town in the state of Connecticut.
Any other town in the state of Connecticut.
That's correct.
How did that happen?
That's a real good question.
That's a great question, but that doesn't satisfy our appetite. We need more.
We need another 200,000.
We need another.
If I may, I know it's a public hearing, but I would like to ask a question of my fellow resident, Tony.
Oh, boy.
Tony, did you happen to raise your concerns to the first selectman of this town?
Oh, that's ancient
regarding
history,
this?
Dawn. It's ancient history. You know that.
But what was the response?
The response was that he distances himself from all of this business and he appoints people to this commission to make these decisions on our behalf. So vote.
I've heard that.
You've heard that.
Yes, I did a lot of projects during the hearings before, and one of them was to go around the state, as was pointed out in your letter, and find out what's out there in propane. And sometimes I went to the towns and sometimes I just called. Well, he said, propane? We would never have propane. We go to New Haven. And that was a common response in a lot of places. But never mind.
Well, your point's well taken. You know, I don't know how we got so much propane. It took place before I got to sit here.
Understood, but why more? Why are we spending 6-7 years maybe and 2 lawsuits?
And your time.
And your time and our time. This is degrading the quality of everyone's life here for the many, for the benefit of the one.
As with anything, everything that's bad, sometimes some good comes out of it. Tony here also serves on a committee because he felt strong enough after being exposed to this. I hope that some of you consider, this really is your town. You own this. Yes.
I know the answer to that question
What's the answer?
about why we want propane. Because people want to come here and sell it to us. That is, and if we don't let them do it, we have no right to tell them what to do unless we make the rules about it.
Yeah, but
That's what zoning is.
Why can't you make the special permits, it says 4 acres, make it 7 acres?
The problem is we could do that, but if there's no property that fits that 7 acres, that fits all those requirements, you've effectively said you can't do it.
Right. And
That's what you can say, 1 acre.
So why don't you make it,
I don't know that that's true.
so why are you allowing 30,000 gallons? Why can't you make it 4,000
I don't know
gallons?
why. As far as
The answer is, I don't know. It has to be based on
You've made it so that Sullivan can come in and apply for a special permit that you guys will approve. It's a fait accompli. The way this is written, it's a fait
I
accompli.
think you have a misconception. You think it would automatically be approved. I mean, look, what's happened, I mean, it's not going to go away. I mean, we had like 400,000 gallons they wanted to try to put in Clinton. That got shot down. They're trying to put it in North Ramsey. The reason they're doing it is the demand is increasing and there's a market for it. Now, I'm not saying it has to go in Guilford, and I'm not saying that's driving my decision. My only point is there's a lot of people that seem to want to have propane, yet nobody wants to have a storage facility near them to support that. The same thing like power plants, and everybody complains about the cost of electricity in the Northeast. How many people want a new power plant built next to them? See what's happening up in Oxford? More power plants would reduce the cost of electricity here. We all want electricity, but nobody wants the plant. I understand it's different when it's your backyard. Would I want it in my backyard? Probably not too. I understand that. But the point, what we're trying to do is to look at the whole picture and try to do what's best for the town. Maybe we do have enough, okay? But all I'm saying is that the demand is out there. The reason these
And why
applications...
move it from where it is now? I still don't understand that. Why move it?
I'm not saying we're going to do anything. I'm just saying that you asked the question, why does this keep coming up? That's your answer, because there's a demand for it. There's a need for more storage. People are willing to invest money to put the storage in. They tried to do it in Clinton. They're trying to do it in North Branford. That's the answer why, okay? Because the demand is increasing. People want to use propane.
Well, actually,
the problem is you got to put it
Mr. Bauer,
someplace.
I have to disagree. With all the studies that have been done by various people, Sandy being one of them, over the past year, we have found conclusively that demand for propane is actually in decline in the United States, as is the price for propane, because demand it's actually an export product.
Why did they want to build a place 400,000 gallons in Clinton, and why is Sullivan trying to go to North Branford?
Because they want to control their destiny as business people, and I understand.
That's right.
That's fair.
But they wouldn't be doing that
That's
if they
fair.
didn't have a demand to...
Is the demand solely in Guilford?
Well, that's another misconception, is that Guilford's supply of propane will stay within the borders of Guilford. And that's a total misconception.
That's a bad argument.
Maybe we do have not disagreeing.
Well, considering that the 135,000 gallon tanks are not yet filled to capacity, one would have to insinuate to oneself, we have enough.
All I know is there are people that are putting down money to build more facilities. They're not doing it to lose their shirt.
Okay, let's just wrap things up. Ed, do you want to?
Just one thing that I just happened to remember and forgot last time. I don't know if the committee is aware that there's a 10-inch high-pressure gas line that runs through the Sullivan, or the proposed Sullivan property on the west end. And the reason I found out is I was approached to want to know if I wanted to tap into it. But I don't know that... You don't want to do that? Not legally tap in, say that. But I don't know that that had ever been brought up. I know that was something that was questioned by some of us on the west end, and we couldn't get an answer at that time. So now that I happen to think about it, I just want to make sure you're aware that there is. So even if nothing else happens, it's one reason maybe we should get rid of the text amendment.
So on a wetlands visit, I went to the facility where they let the gas out of that liquid line and turn it into vapor. And as with any expanding gas, it's refrigeration. You have to get rid of that cold. And so they have a tunnel that they put the liquid gas through, and they burn this huge flame around it. And it's right on US Route 1. And if you go there, your mouth will drop open because it's this immense flame in a tunnel, and you can hear it roaring from the street. I don't even know. Again, I wasn't here then. Okay, one more comment.
One quick comment.
Yes, ma'am.
If I was on your committee, I would sooner rather be responsible for an ugly-looking building in town than I would for the lives of the people in town.
Of the lights.
Or the lights.
Or the lights.
Or the signs.
Or the signs.
We're responsible for all.
We're responsible for it all.
Okay, so
Chairman, can we just remind the members of the public that at the next meeting, this public hearing gets continued, and then after it gets closed, we deliberate shortly after that. Once the public hearing is closed, our deliberations occur, and then you'll see our presumably, well, maybe you'll hear our reasoning from some of us. And you'll also, the vote will occur at that time.
Okay, thank you.
The
next meeting. We're going to continue this right now, and I would urge you to please come, and please bring other people.
And it's part of the public record who votes for.
We're going to do it right in front of you. We're going to do it on that camera.
No, I didn't do it.
It's on your website.
And you can actually, here's something for you. Now, you are old running people, and you all have computers. All of our meetings are on YouTube. And you can bring up that meeting. You can bring up that actual meeting, and you can watch who voted which one.
You can sit through all of this again.
We do this every 2 weeks.
When is the next meeting?
the first and third Wednesday of every month, so it'll be the first Wednesday of June.
Bring your family, it's a
Whatever that
more
is.
pressure.
There's a big room right downstairs.
Popcorn,
And-
yes.
And why are we using the small one?
Right, so if you guys promise to bring some extra people, I'll ask Lisa to reserve a bigger room. You gonna bring them? Okay, so, 5 minutes, I got it. Okay, so can I'm gonna count on you, you're all gonna come. I'm counting on you. I'm gonna be here for you. June 3rd? Is it June 3rd, next meeting?
Whatever the first Wednesday is of June.
Yeah. I will be here, as I am here all the time. I urge you to please join me. It's important and it matters. Thank you. Can I get a motion to continue this to the next meeting?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, we have more business. We're going to keep going.
Mr. Chairman, we have the minutes to approve and maybe the bills, and that's
We
it.
have two referrals from the Board of Selectmen. We do, and they're mandatory. We are compelled. Thank you. We appreciate it. Okay. We don't have any bills. We have, can I get a motion to approve the minutes of 5/6/15?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I read these. They look very good. Our minutes are looking great. Lisa, good job. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate you doing that. All those in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you, sir.
The meeting, so.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, with no further
No, there is business before us, sir.
You have those mandatory referrals.
Mandatory referrals, sir. Last page.
We don't vote on them.
Yes, you do.
Yeah, you do.
We have to.
They're mandatory.
State statute.
I got it. We only have 4 minutes. Let's do this.
You have proposed motions, I believe.
Okay, someone make a motion that we accept this first one, please.
So moved.
Voted that in accordance with Section 824, the Planning and Zoning Commission approves the sale of town properties in Shore Drive and Woodland Road as described in the letter to the Commission from the First Selectman dated May 18, 2015.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Voted that in accordance with Section 824, the Planning and Zoning Commission recommends against purchasing the state-owned property on Leeds Island Road as recommended by the Land Acquisition Commission and as described in the letter from the First Selectman dated May 18, 2015.
Against?
That's what he said.
Yes, that's what, for some reason, town council said you have to do this. It has to be a mandatory referral, even though it's being recommended against it.
Well, it also says in favor for, so
That's a different here.
It's, the first one is approving the sale of four properties. This one is recommending that we do not purchase this property on Leeds Island Road as recommended by the Land Acquisition Commission.
Staff, is this okay that we don't do this? Have you read this?
It was,
No action.
land acquisition, it was not strategic to the needs, it's not adjoining any public land, it's not adjoining any protected lands. It's sort of an orphan piece of property, and land acquisition didn't think it would be of any value to the town to purchase, that the money would be better spent elsewhere.
Well, that's not my point.
Yep.
We're doing two, right?
Yes. We voted.
It says,
Second half of 2 is what he's talking about.
What does it say, Tom?
The first one was the approval of the sale of the four town properties in Shore Drive. And the second one
the Board of
was,
Selectmen also, under 2, it says, the Board of Selectmen also voted unanimously to accept the Land Acquisition Commission's recommendation not to purchase a state-owned parcel on Leeds Island Road pursuant to at a town meeting on June 1st.
And that's the motion.
yes, that's the second motion that I
That's the
just
motion
read.
before
Planning and
us.
zoning mandatory referral is necessary should the town meeting vote in favor of the purchase of the property.
The town
We're saying
meeting
we should
cannot,
not.
the town meeting can go against the recommendation of the Land Acquisition Commission and vote in favor of buying this.
All right,
We don't
I'm
know
going to
enough about-
second the recommend, we don't
Yeah,
have a
all
second
right,
yet. A second.
Someone seconded it?
Yep.
All right, so good. So let's do this. We have 1 minute left on the tape. We can finish this. All those in favor of not buying this piece of property?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we have nothing left before us.
Move to adjourn.
Don't forget, next Wednesday, we have a
Wednesday
special public
downstairs.
hearing meeting
Yep.
Special meeting on the 27th.
to consider the plan of
For
conservation.
plan of conservation.
It's an exciting meeting. Can I get a motion to close the meeting?
So moved.
Any seconds? All those in favor? Good night, everybody.
Let's say,